Well, happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome in to the SPL. We've got a great day of SMITE action for you here to round out your week and kick off into the next one. Dolson and Mifflin on the desk all day today to talk about the action that we will see. Mifflin, we've got a couple great matchups to look at here. Knights versus Rival World Championship rematch, of course, with a couple changes in there, and then SSG Radiance to round out the day. I think it's hard to pick one or the two of those that you're looking forward to more.
I'm definitely looking forward to this PK Rival. You call it a World Championship rematch. I'm going to call it the World Championship grudge match. The MVP playing against the entirety of his old roster. I mean, there's got to be some fun dynamics there.
Yeah, that's true. An interesting point that I'm sure we'll talk about in the Rival pregame segment. Here are your standings going into today. About half the teams in the league already at those 4-game marks, and the other 4 teams in the league will reach that point. Radiant's trying to hold on to that undefeated spot up on top, currently 3-0. We'll be battling SSG to remain on top, and then, as pointed out, Rival versus Knights. But let's talk about the Knights a little bit. Obviously, you've lost Sam since the last time that these guys have played, but you've added in QvoFred. What is your kind of metric on how Qvo has been in the jungle here for this Knights team?
I mean, he's been doing his job incredibly well. It seems like he's adapted fully to the play style that PK is really looking for. I mean, Qvo, one of the few players that's really willing to camp out that soul lane, get a lot of synergy there with Scary D, one of the most aggressive soul laners in the league. I mean, this guy's playing incredibly well. Zapman has been back to form as well. I mean, the aggressive plays we've been seeing there. Shades of Barracuda. Never thought I'd be saying that.
Hey, you're not wrong. And hey, Shades of Barracuda from yesterday, a quadra kill in a game, certainly nothing to scoff at. And I think the question around this Knights team is, and it's been kind of reiterated going into this season, but it's, in the SPL last year, they were kind of that lower middle of the pack team and then had a fantastic run through Worlds and won the World Championship. They're a talented team. Certainly cannot take that away from them. But the big question going into this year is, can you do better on a more consistent basis throughout the regular season? And it's been a tough start, admittedly, for them. They start off with a loss to Radiance 2-0. They end up winning against Obey and then fall 2-1 to SSG. So my next question to you, Mifflin, is do you think this Knights team has made changes, made improvements that will find them better success throughout this split than maybe what they found last year?
Every single loss the Knights have taken this year, they've looked incredibly good. No game has been a complete wash. These guys are playing at an incredibly high level. I think saying that they were a middle pack team last year was true for the online stage, but this year I think the competition is just so steep. So many teams are playing at this top level that it's a little bit harder. PK is a team that I expect to be Lanimals. Zapman, one of these veteran players, all these guys, I feel like they benefit from being able to look across the stage into their enemy's eyes and just sense that fear. So maybe in the online stage a little bit quieter, but definitely keep your eyes out once these lands start rolling in.
Expectations still high for this Knights team, and one of the guys, Paul, in the mid lane, has high expectations for himself and the rest of his team as well. And I was able to sit down with him and talk to him, see how he's feeling prior to this World Championship rematch. I'm here with Paul, mid laner of the Pittsburgh Knights, and we'll be talking about their matchup against Team Rival here today. First off, Paul, a bit of a mixed start for you guys. A loss, a big win, and then a longer, closer 3-game set. Where does kind of the confidence stand for this Knights roster through the first 3 games of the split?
Well, usually I don't know, man. I thought we were good for that set, but like sometimes we just whiff on game day, and it's like, especially like during the SML LAN or whatever it was when we lost first round to that SML team, I forget, Insignum or whatever.
Right.
It's like there's always just some like big wake up call, and so we're getting back into gear for this set.
Yeah, and especially going up against Rival, obviously, not necessarily the org, but this roster. Last time you guys played Rival, was it Worlds where you ended up winning? Do you think going into a matchup like this, that there's a little bit of something extra on the table going up against Rival specifically?
I personally didn't think about that. I just think it's like another game, and
sure.
I really want to win to improve our standing, but maybe there's a little bit extra because like Sam's on the team, but I honestly don't really care that much extra. So
I guess that's an interesting kind of follow-up point there. How is it going to be, do you think, playing up against Sam? In a weird way, does that maybe give you an edge knowing his specific jungle tendencies, or are you concerned about them now maybe having an edge after he played with you guys for so long?
I think they probably have more of an edge because he knows how all 4 of us play, and we only know obviously how he just plays. So
Right.
yeah, maybe they have a bit of an edge. I don't know though. I really feel like this match can go either way though.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very close, a lot of fun to watch. Kind of final thoughts from you. CaptainTwig, bit of a role swap here for him, hasn't played mid in a long time. What do you make of maybe that mid lane matchup that you'll have for yourself? What are your expectations maybe going up against CaptainTwig?
I don't know. In scrims he was pretty good, but then I saw his Raijin dash into the tower during the SPL game. So I don't know, man. Just flip a coin, dude. We'll see what happens.
That's right. This is certainly going to be a great matchup, Paul. Thanks for sitting down with me. Best of luck to you guys today. Let's get this one going. So interesting thoughts there from Paul, and I kind of like the way that he sort of mentioned there maybe is a little bit extra in it, but it's not necessarily rival where there's something extra here for the Knights guys. It's the fact that they're going up against their old teammate and Sam, and maybe from a player perspective, Myth, does that tend to hold true going up against an old teammate? Do you kind of have a little something extra blowing wind in your sails?
Nothing feels worse than losing to someone that you used to play with, but Paul didn't seem pressed even in the slightest. He said, well, I'm not really that worried. So
Right.
Maybe they've got something in the back pocket. I mean, Paul, this dude who doesn't care about the meta. He doesn't care about what's happening around him. He's going to lock in Hebo. He's going to lock in Hell, and he's going to do what he does. I think that is reflected in that interview.
Of course, going against rival, as has been mentioned, and again has been mentioned, the swap Sam for Soccer, the world's MVP, going over to Team Rival here. So early on, I think same question that we levied about QvoFred, I think you can also ask about Sam for Soccer. Do you think the addition of Sam for Soccer has been a net increase here for Team Rival, and it's enough to kind of lift them over to the team that bested them at Worlds?
You'll never catch me slandering Sam. I mean, what did Aggro say last week or just recently? He's a murderer, a cold-blooded killer, a sociopath, and a world's MVP. All of those things, you can't take it away from him. His play has been phenomenal. He's been getting these aggressive picks. He single-handedly seemed to bring Susano back into this SPL meta. I mean, we can't understate this guy.
Yeah, I think big shoes to not necessarily fill, but kind of make his own in this rival composition. And I think expectations for them were so high going into this year. You stumble right out of the gate against a United, but I think this rival team has started to get some momentum going. We've talked about Sam a little bit, so let's jump down to an interview that I was able to have with him and see how he's feeling going up against his former team. All right, I'm down here with Sam for Soccer jungler of Team Rival, talking to him about their matchup against the Knights here today. First off, Sam, obviously we've kind of talked about the rough start against the United, but since then you guys have gone back-to-back in your wins. Do you think as a team you're starting to hit that stride and really getting some of that momentum going?
Yeah, I definitely say so. I don't know if we're completely in full stride yet, I wouldn't say. We're still making a lot of maybe just sloppy mistakes in areas that we probably shouldn't be making, getting picked randomly and things like that. But we definitely felt a lot better in the past game alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to kind of watch the growth of this team and see how you guys move forward. And we all expect big things, but specifically, excuse me, in this matchup, going up against the Knights now as an org, it's a new title, but it's 4 out of 5 members of the team that you played on against Rival last year. Is there anything extra in this, maybe as a team, first off, as a team now for Rival? I guess you don't necessarily feel like revenge tendencies, but is there anything extra for Rival going up against this Knights roster?
I don't know if I'd say there is. I don't think so. I mean, for me personally, or just in general, whenever you play against old teammates and just friends overall, you always want to win a little bit more, but I think aside from that, there's not too much,
And I am curious, sort of your take on that. I just spoke with Paul and kind of asked him a little bit about that. What is your mindset maybe going up against them? Do you think in a weird way you almost have an edge in this matchup knowing 4 out of 5 maybe specific tendencies, or is it really not a big factor?
Maybe a little edge. I mean, you know how people like to play things or like do certain ways, like play the map, so that always is helpful because you can kind of anticipate what they're doing. But I mean, people change stuff all the time, and it can't do
Right.
that much for you.
Right, so maybe a slight edge, but stuff changes
Yeah,
enough
yeah.
that adds some variability. Kind of final thoughts. One matchup that won't be different here in this matchup. You, QvoFred there in the
hmm
jungle. How do you feel going up against a talented jungler like QvoFred?
I mean, it's just always fun to play against really
Yep.
good and talented junglers. Fred's always been a really good jungler, and I haven't played against him that much, just being from EU, and I'm newer to the league. But he's really good and always fun to play against. Yeah.
Well, I gotta ask quick thoughts on prediction for this matchup. You think you guys come out with the win?
Yeah, I would predict a 2, but I mean, they're a good team for sure, so it could be some close games.
Yeah, Paul had similar answers as well. It could be a coin flip here in this matchup. Certainly will be close. Sam, thanks for sitting down, and best of luck today.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, Sam is feeling like the 2-0 said might be a 2-1 here. And I think that's an interesting kind of point to jump off here, Mifflin. The community at large and in-game voting, I think 85% or so here for Team Rival. Going into picks and bans, pre-game number 1, where did your vote land this week?
I've got to give the edge to Rival. I mean, they've been playing incredibly well the entire season. They've been finding their true story, right? They found the soul of this scheme. They have a clear identity in what they're looking for. I think that's something a lot of the other teams are lacking right now as they get used to these new rosters.
Well, hey, why don't we leap into picks and bans for game number 1 and get this one kicked off. Lots of anticipation on these two teams, these two rosters, going head-to-head one more time after the World Championship game, where obviously SK, now PK is the roster, were able to lift that hammer. So lots of expectations, lots of kind of extra effort behind it, but maybe not as much. I think that was an interesting point coming out of those interviews, is that obviously we're playing against these guys, but at the end of the day, it's just an SPL set. It's not a big tournament knockout match. They obviously want to win, but there isn't necessarily a whole level of extra pressure on it that's going to bog them down. So I'm fun to watch this one and see how things pan out. Jumping into bans, though, I think interestingly enough, Mifflin, Raijin has been a big pick in the mid lane. Plenty of damage, control, mobility as well, and the Knights tend to agree to the tune of their first ban.
I mean, Raijin is this god that's going to continually deal so much damage. He's got a slightly weaker early game, but the second he hits that mid-game level 10, his damage output is nearly second to none. And from a safe distance as well, with additional CC in the ultimate, this god has proven time and time again, not only is he a decent utility pick for the leap, but he's also just a fantastic burst mage. The only thing Raijin's truly lacking is objective confirm, but a lot of these teams really aren't looking for objectives pre-team fight.
Right, it tends to be fight and then maybe turn to the objective afterwards. That does open up a Camazotz, though. I'd argue that the 5 of the 6 bans somewhat standard for what we've seen, and Raijin, I think, really takes the spot of the Camazotz here. So we're going to get to see our first look at Camazotz after some recent changes and some number decreases and really where he stands in this current meta. I think so, and I think you tend to agree that he's still in a very strong spot.
I mean, we took a little bit of power off of his one, some of that additional power you get from the Echo, but his damage output is still the same. His survivability is still incredibly high. He's got ways to just exit the playfield and fly out of any form of danger. Camazotz is going to be an incredibly good pick, as well as a flex pick. But speaking of flex picks, Rival take 2. Ullr could go into that long lane, or we could see him in mid. Odin could go solo, could go support. I imagine he's going to go support.
Yeah, what's your kind of take on that, the rise of this mid lane hunter? I mean, it's largely been Ullr playing in that mid lane. We saw it paired with the Freya, but sometimes it's just been, the mid lane mage just rotates down to that long lane. Why do you think there's been this sudden shift? Is it just the power of Ullr on his own makes him viable kind of anywhere?
I think it's Transcendence has CDR on it, and Ullr's late game automation has shifted a little bit, so he doesn't fall off nearly as much. He's technically just a physical mage, and we saw it yesterday. Ullr was picked up with a Jotun's Wrath very early on to get that additional CDR, so there's definitely ways to itemize him in mid to really make use of those. I want to talk about this hell. I mean, Paul, one of the best hells, the premier hell in the league, and he's getting it uncontested when we're seeing all these other teams are banning it out or looking for it, but Hell into Odin is a big question mark. That's one of the age-old classic counters. No way to escape that cage, no healing inside of it. It's going to be interesting to see how they play around that.
Yeah, Hell has been a priority pick not only for Paul in the past, but really a lot of teams in the SPL here as of late just bring so much to the table, and I think it's worthwhile to either ban her out, pick her up, and the Knights feel that way here. Cerberus for the first time in the SPL, and I am curious where your mind goes on this one. Is there maybe a specific reason we haven't seen him at all, and are you happy now that Rival have pivoted towards the Cerberus?
Cerberus is a Guardian that deals damage. You're not really picking him for anything besides that. Yes, he's got this huge CC ultimate, but even then, it's so easy to beads. It's one that you have a lot of reaction time. It's not like a Sobek pluck where it's if you touch it, your beads a little bit too late, not only do you still get flung, but you lose it. Cerberus is a lot more damage-centric. I think of him more as a Guardian version of Guan Yu. It's decent in the soul lane. You got a lot of lockdown. You got a lot of huge damage potential, but his fight potential in the 1v1 is a little bit lacking.
Yeah. It's so interesting, and specifically with the Agni, I think yesterday we saw it for the first couple of times, really, that we have in the SPL, and I think it was the Renegades that ended up pivoting towards Agni, and it worked out in one of the 2 games that they've gone with him. Obviously, the 50% win rate there for him. But what we saw when he was picked is sort of what you hope. Late game, high burst damage in these team fights, massive potential to upend others on those damage charts. And Rival are going to try to make use of that here. I'm assuming CaptainTwig, pending a role swap with Ullr in the mid lane and Agni going over to that long lane. Expectations from you for this Agni here in this game?
Agni is so good at playing from far away. That damage output's really nice. He's got a fantastic way to apply Divine Ruin. I mean, it seems to me like Rival was planning for Paul to play Hell. They got the Odin for the anti-heal. They got this Cerberus anti-heal. Agni has a very easy time applying Divine Ruin, and it's going to continue to tick away at them with Agni's passive. There's a lot of ways for them to deal with this Hell. I like the draft from Rival so far.
Well, the Knights are going to lock in Hachiman and Bacchus, assuming for that duo long lane, if that's the route they choose to go. Knights, all 5 locked in. What do you make of their comp?
Knights, their comp, it looks to me like they're looking for a lot of aggression, sans this Hell. Bacchus will be able to jump in on cooldown. Camazotz will be able to bully out his lane. Hunbot's huge team fight god. Hachiman a little bit on the safe side, but when chosen to play aggressively, it's essentially a 5-man ult guaranteed with that giant cone and gap close. These guys are looking to win the early and continue winning.
Mifflin, I cannot wait to kick this one off. Knights Rival World Championship rematch. Let's kick it off.
Rematch, but with those junglers maybe in a bit of a different spot here. Thanks to Olsen and Miff for breaking it down for us on the desk. It's Finch and Gore as we move into the action. And Gore, this match does have, it feels like, some extra weight to it. I know Paul maybe didn't want to admit it, but I'm sure they'd love to be able to take down Rival and CM for Soccer. The only problem is, I think Rival has drafted a really good composition to go up against this Hell in particular.
Yeah. And not only just against the Hell, but just in general, I think it plays to all of their strengths. And that's one of the things that stands out the most to me, is being able to play against, specifically as I had mentioned, like in the interviews, as you pointed out, maybe isolating Paul, because we've seen what this Hell can do, and well, we've seen why it's one of his top gods. But it's also being able to kind of flex into something like a Cerberus, to grab the Agni that we just saw emerge yesterday. Like these things that maybe aren't seen as often, but I think in the hands of Rival, at least right now, they make me smile. They feel like they have good potential behind them. I just hope it all gets realized.
I mean, these are 2 really strong compositions, right? I'm glad they hovered that Artemis there for a moment for the Knights. They end up going with the Hachiman, which I like to get that mobility. I was a bit worried that Artemis could potentially get punished. But aside from the fact that the Hell's in a tough match, you've got these gods reliant on their leaps, like Scary D, like QvoFred, like Neil playing into the Awilix. Then you do have all these gods who apply anti-heal as well really well. fineokay has it with his passive. Brawlers is easy to be built for Sam and for Ullr. And Scary D's in trouble already. Sam for Soccer, with an early rotation to solo, shuts down the Camazotz.
Sometimes that's all you need. You know, you see the anti-heal, and Hell's the big conversation, but you have to understand how much that's also going to apply over to the Camazotz as well, right? The sustain that we have talked about with Camazotz being part of the reason he's so high priority, it's going to help that solo in that like 1v1 matchup here for fineokay. And it's also coming down to the fact that he's got a little bit of sustain for himself. Obviously, being a Guardian, he's got that tankiness as well. I think this is an interesting pick that is going to help out fineokay almost immediately in lane, as we've seen. But then you translate into the team fights, and it just gets more difficult for the Knights to deal with.
Well, Zapman avoids PBM's aggression there on left, but Gore, I think that you've correctly identified that Rival really do have a good draft specifically to deal with this. Twig is getting aggressive in middle lane. And Gore, I do kind of want to talk about your point, but I think it's interesting to talk about this movement we just saw from Twig. You know, we've been talking about how he's been really aggressive and sometimes it hurts them, but I think that could be his unique identity in the middle lane, right? Is that he is willing to play up and take those aggressive opportunities. It could be a boon for them, as Paul's got to be careful. Sam is lurking here on the right-hand side, and he can't afford to step up, or he could easily get knocked up. Twig dashes in, they get the stun, and the cleanse doesn't come out in time. Featherstedt sets up for the second kill for Sam.
I mean, that's just a 1-2 step, right? I mean, Scary D over here looks like he wants to get aggressive. I don't know if this is even a fight I want to take, right? Again, anti-heal coming through. And that seems to be the way the Knights are, is just, they want to take those steps forward. They want to maybe get involved in the fight, but you have someone like Sam sitting in the sidelines just waiting. And that's one of those moments that shows why he's an MVP, why he was able to do so much in that one weekend at Worlds, and why he's a really good pickup here for Rival, enough so that they were able to kind of shift their team dynamic just to fit him in. And it's just the patience that came down from waiting for not even Paul to make his mistake. Paul just took 2 steps forward out of his tower line. He was just ready for it and wanted to be able to bait that, because the longer you keep this held down, the easier it will be for your team, specifically the Agni, but everyone, to transition into that late game without having to worry about the sustain that Paul's going to be outputting.
And Twig did a good job kind of disguising that gank as well, because he's good.
Oh, yeah.
He's been stepping up in lane all game so far, right? These first 3 lanes, just getting aggressive, standing at his line. So normally when you see that aggression, you think the gank's coming, but because it's Twig and he has this aura, just always looking to be aggressive, I think it is somewhat disguised. So yeah. I've kind of come around a little bit on my way of thinking about Twig. Maybe it's more of an asset for this team, his aggression, rather than something that needs to be curbed.
And it's so weird because, you know, on Friday when I got to talk to him, that was one of the things he said that he was thinking about. He's just like, you know, I have been playing pretty aggressively and it's caused a little bit of trouble. It's like, maybe I need to slow it down, but as he pointed out, it almost works for him. In fact, I mean, 2 of the bans that the Knights had were to target him out and down. The Raijin and the Merlin were taken out here to try and take something away from Twig. I think Raijin more than Merlin, but he's been so aggressive, as you pointed out, that you can't really take him off of something and slow him down. The only thing that's making him back here is because he has no mana to continue the fight, right? And I think Agni is that perfect balance where it's going to bring him enough CC, enough control for his team, so he can play aggressive, but still stay safe. Yeah, if you go back way back when, it's not as safe as having CC immunity on the dash, but it's still a nice, like, disengage to get you out of there. You can throw your ult from very long distance and get the stun with the gas combo, so you don't even have to put yourself in too much danger. All of his aggression is just because he likes to fight.
Sam aggressive yet again. Zapman being patient with that ultimate. Looks like he had the right read. Zapman didn't use beads or anything. He just kind of turned around, fought Sam, and then walked away. And he had the right read. Sam wasn't particularly willing to hard commit there either. But that is perhaps the Zapman effect. My man is always confident in his ability. You're never going to gank Zapman more than he's used to, because that's just kind of his life all the time.
Yeah, when you regularly have 4-man rotations to your tier 1 tower, you tend to just get kind of used to it. And I think, honestly, that might be a benefit for Zapman, right? Where it's just like, do I need to use my beads here? Nah, I'm fine. I'll just go ahead and walk on out of this one. And it's also that interesting choice. You have Teleria boots picked up here for Sam, where it's going to give him that movement speed. It's going to allow him to make the rotations that we've seen him prone to already. But it is going to come into those factors. Like in a 1v1 right there, does having that little bit of extra power help you maybe get a kill versus, or at least lock down Zapman a little more versus being able to chase someone or make these rotations from lane to lane? I think at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at it, the 40 physical power that you get off of those boots, I guess the 25 more that you're going to get is not going to be like the biggest swing in your favor. He's looking for the opportunities, not to get the kill there, but to harass Zapman, to make it so that purple buff doesn't go his way, or at least doesn't go his way easily, and to cause that farm to slow down for the Knights.
I think that's actually a good point, Gormizer. I mean, with 25 extra power, maybe he doesn't kill him, but I bet Zapman can't just walk away, right? He's got to ult or something there in that spot. So I think it's worth it. That is sort of the trade-off that Sam gives. And now this next gank, not going to be quite as easy. Zapman goes right up onto the horse right away. And see, this is sort of that trickle-down effect you were talking about. He is able to make more rotations, but maybe he's not quite threatening enough in these early skirmishes.
Well, and I'm wondering if Zapman's the guy to pressure out. Like, Hachiman's pretty safe. You don't necessarily have to give up a whole lot to be able to farm in lane and disengage. As we saw, he just uses the ult. It's not a game changer, so you're perfectly fine throwing that out there if it means saving your life and keeping your farm.
I know Sam is here. Can't quite find him, though, with that belly flop, so he's able to disengage safely, but QvoFred wants a bit more action, blinking in with the Fear No Evil, and PBM never really stood a chance, but he does lock everyone else down inside the cage. They get some members low, but Rival can't capitalize on the backside. That is a clean pick from Qvo, taking down PBM, but Sam jumps back in, gets flopped, and ends up having to leave.
Was wondering what Sam wanted there, and there's just enough low health bars that I can feel, again, that aggression, that bloodlust that always tends to take over, specifically junglers and solo laners, I think, more than anything, but coming through where it's just, you know, you're so close to be able to get in and maybe cause a big play for your team. But you just kind of have to walk away from that one. Losing PBM, it's unfortunate. The cage was good, but I think the hell sustain, the cleanses that Paul can throw out as well, make it too difficult to guarantee those combos to land.
Scary D with a good jump. Still has that bat out of hell, so maybe he's not in too much trouble, but PBM is lurking in the wings. There's the bat out of hell, and Rival definitely didn't want to chase him down the back end. They didn't even step up, so they got the ult they were looking for, and that's enough for them. But now look at PBM. He is pushed up on this side of the map. There's no blue buff to get, and Scary D should be able to, get that back just fine. It's a good pressure, but they didn't find any kills.
It's, again, and the same idea. He's got the Teleria boot, so PBM can run around the map as much as he wants, but the question is it going to give you the pressure you need? Sam was in some really good spots early on, but it feels kind of like the harassment's just being thrown out for the sake of it.
NeilMah did pick up beads early. They're helping him here, but will it be enough help? Another instance of backing off. Sam perhaps not wanting to commit the leap with QvoFred lurking nearby, but either way, NeilMah makes out of there quite nicely. It's a couple times that Rival have been lax on the trigger, but Zapman could be in some trouble. He's fallen low to PandaCat, but he's got backup with QvoFred. Hail of Arrows not even close, and PandaCat gets well baited by Zap. Meanwhile, PolarBearMike rotates over again to solo and shuts down Scary.
And they need something to get picked up, right? A lot of these last couple of kills have gone unanswered from the Knights, so at least getting that one-for-one trade, you get fineokay into a position, as well as Sam into a position where they can open up the door for aggression in the jungle. Right around the blue buff respawn, we see the experience camps coming back up, so they get to strip something away over here for that kill. Whereas Zap, they don't get too much. They're pinging the purple buff right now, but they might even get another kill onto Neil.
NeilMah gets locked down. They CC chain him with the ultimate. The lockdown wasn't great. NeilMah still alive. They've really not been able to figure out how to contain this Bacchus. It's enough, though, for the blue buff invade. Rival successfully grabbed that and leave. They already pressured Scary with 2 kills onto him as well. And fineokay, who is a pretty big component of their anti-heal up against this Hell and the Camazotz, is leading the map right now. So I doubt Rival are feeling like they're really under any stress.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of low pressure. Like, again, a lot of what they've been throwing out has been attempts at kills. I don't know if they're really hurting when they don't get it, although they are investing a lot. I mean, even there, those 2 ults just to kind of slightly hurt Bacchus, right? Like, he comes out like with maybe a cut on his arm, slaps a Band-Aid on it, has no issue. It's interesting to see how much they're willing to commit to things that aren't guaranteed right now. I think later on in the game, we'll see something like that. Like, Neil might just get absolutely eviscerated 10 minutes from now in an instant like that. Maybe that's going to be able to open these plays up. But maybe they're just trying to pull the eyes away, keep the pressure on the Knights so they're forced to make weird decisions like, do we want to fight a 10-minute Gold Fury right now? Like, yes, Neil's here, but is that going to force something out of the Knights that would give Rival the advantage?
Mike times the leap well, gets away from the flop from NeilMah. The Gold Fury started up by Rival. Seems as though they really weren't all that interested in the fight. Maybe if they could steal it, they would take it, but NeilMah did a good job showing some presence, and Rival ends up having to give it up. So they're about 2,000 gold or so in the lead, our team Rival, and they've got some picks like the Awilix, the Ullr, where that makes some sense to me. But there's been a lot of focus on solo as well, as the Knights are now the ones starting up the Gold Fury. It's really only Mike and PBM that are nearby. This is great recognition from the Order side team that they might have an advantage, and they're burning the Fury fast enough. It does get reset. The Knights secure it nicely, and they're looking for PandaCat on the back end. Scary D wants to keep up the chase, but they can't quite claim his life. They'll just have to settle for the objective.
My eyes immediately jump over to what are you going to do if you're a rival here? You have to get something. Unfortunately, that's a Fear No Evil in mid lane. And man, if you're hoping for anything in retaliation, that's going to be 2 kills. Technically, there was a tier 1 and now a blue buff steal if you're fineokay. So I guess the solo, again, is still getting something out of this. But it feels like rival are like pushing the limits. They're trying to figure out what's going to make the Knights overcommit. And the Knights just aren't taking the bait. They don't care. If you start up the Gold Fury, they know that they are in a position to rotate and fight. And then the minute they backed, the calls were perfect. I think the Knights recognize that scenario and lay claim to what is theirs, I guess, at that point by going in and taking that Gold Fury, chasing off PandaCat, getting a kill onto Sam, just making sure that rival know they're not in control.
A lot of that is just because, kind of as you mentioned, fineokay didn't rotate over. PandaCat in trouble. Good EI Jutsu stun into the belt, and PandaCat, without the leap there at that point, and having used the beads, was certainly dead to right. So that is certainly unfortunate. Even when PandaCat comes back up, he'll be very vulnerable, but there could be more punishment coming for Scary D. Good job getting away from Stygian Torment, and he still has the Bat Out of Hell, well timed to get away from the Feather Step, and Scary D played that about as well as possible.
I mean, being able to just walk away from that one, that's part of the reason you pick Camazotz. He is not necessarily floating in the 1v1 going well for solo lane. 2 levels down, has lost his tower and half of the tier 2 already. But if you're going to have Sam and Fine commit to ganking you this heavily, right now there's no Fury up, so it's safer for rival. But in moments like that, you start looking at the left-hand side of the map. If I'm the Knights, where can we start applying our pressure? They're committing so much just to try and deal with Scary D here, that we can start applying that, as we've seen, to like PandaCat, to PBM. Maybe even start trying to catch Twig out in some of these instances, although since early on when we saw a little bit of aggression from him and it kind of paying off for him and Sam, rival haven't really stepped past that, like, you know, middle line, 50-yard line across the map. They've been a little more timid to dip their feet in the water that is the side of the Knights jungle.
And the thing is, Gore, I don't think that we're going to know if this strat has worked until fineokay rotates over, right? They put all their stock in him, but he hasn't been a team fight yet. A Scary D about to get ganked yet again, a 3-man rotation. And this time, there is no Bat Out of Hell. There is no escape for Scary D. He gets caught by the Stygian Torment. fineokay gets the kill. QvoFred drops the Fear No Evil, but now he's locked inside the cage. He is able to leap back out of there, though, and get back to safety. But further pressure here in solo, and that's my point, Gore. Until we see fineokay in team fights, the lead that rival has built up hasn't even really been brought to the rest of the map yet.
And I'm just wondering if it's going to be worth the investment. Right now, there's only one, maybe 2 more instances where they could shift over to get something like a Cursed Ankh, right? And I doubt we're going to see Sam pick it up, so maybe that's something PBM are going to go. They've got a couple of anti-heal things, but my concern late game is more the hell than anything.
fineokay leaves the tower maybe a bit too soon. That leaves Sam taking 2 big shots, and he falls easily. That's a good punish from NeilMah. But these Agni bombs from CaptainTwig are starting to chunk, and Neil does end up falling in trade. Meanwhile, Zapman gets aggressive on the red buff. He is committed to EI Jutsu, but PandaCat can't find the axe, can't find the hail of arrows, so Zapman gets to just walk away.
I mean, for everything they are committing over here on the right-hand side of the map, I feel like the Knights still walk out of that one ahead. They lose Neil, which, yeah, it hurts, but not as much as losing your jungler. Qvo, though, caught out.
And he's definitely going to fall there. That was QvoFred just kind of getting caught up in the CC chain and did not have purification feeds. He even uses the Fear No Evil in a futile effort. So now, fineokay pulling the Pyromancer wants the squad to come over and help him out with it. And this has been Rival's full-on gamble, right? They are almost W-keying, face-stuffing down right and saying, we think that this lead will be enough. So they pull the Pyro. In comes Scary D, who's a bit behind. Up into the Bat Out of Hell. He wants to zone away Twig. The fight not about Pyro anymore. It's about the back end where Scary's looking for the kill to the Agni but can't quite find it. Meanwhile, Sam hunting down Paul. They've left this hell on an island all by herself. The cleanse is there, but she's not healing as much, and rival get the kill.
And that's going to be Sam using the pull just to get and lock down Neil. Everyone is low here on rival, so they have to play it very carefully for the next few steps. And Scary D, I think, escaping with his life is a win for the Knights, considering how aggressive he got, but it's starting to show the dynamic, that fight specifically, where Rival are going to turn their attention. They locked down Scary D early to get fineokay this lead, so now fineokay can commit everything he needs to onto Paul. The CC, the stun, the ult, whatever he has to drop to make sure that this hell won't be present, or at least can get zoned away so her heal won't be potent for anyone but herself. And if you can lock Paul down and away from that, we start to see maybe you don't need an Ankh. Maybe this Brawlers, maybe this Divine Ruin are all we're going to need because she's not in the fight enough to make a difference.
Fury should be claimed here by Rival. I don't really see anyone from the Knights anywhere nearby. Closest was Neil at the red buff. So this game remains even if you just look at the charts. But that's why I think that this investment is so important to talk about, because the left side is ahead for the Knights. That's where the Ullr is. That's where Neil and Qvo have been doing really well. But then on the right side, that's where fineokay is ahead, and CaptainTwig, after building up on this right-hand side of the map. The question is, fineokay and the Cerberus, are they going to be enough to outweigh the Knights? Maybe we'll get our first glimpse at it as Zapman in trouble in left. Relic's buying him some time. He gets to the ultimate, but Stygian Torment can't kill him and it can't grab him. But Fear No Evil catches 3 members. That's a huge ultimate from QvoFred. NeilMah takes care of CaptainTwig early, and the Knights can continue to surge. They've already forced Rival back, and they're looking for more.
I mean, just being able to chase everyone down like this is beautiful. Paul using the heal gets everyone going and the movement speed out from it. They want to chase down more than anything. The Fury's already gone, though, so the Knights getting pressure here won't amount to much on the map afterward. They get a really good return kill to be able to isolate Twig and burn him down. But I don't know if I'm seeing the investment. Again, we've been talking about fineokay making a rotation. He finally makes one, and he gets a lot of beads. I will take that as a ton for team fights. It gives a lot of potency to Rival to maybe come back in here, but I don't know if it's going to be worthwhile just yet.
Pyromancer low. PBM is in the CC chain, and that means he cannot contest. The Knights grab yet another objective, and this game continues to go back and forth. And that looming question that is over the Knights' head, right, is this lead for fineokay really going to be that big of a problem for us later on in the game? Well, that lead is starting to shrink a bit here, isn't it? Gormizer, Scary D closing the gap. More importantly, fineokay's lead relative to the rest of the map is starting to shrink as well. I mean, Paul is the same level as him. Zapman is ahead. I understand that Rival have drafted really well. They've got the anti-heal. I think they've got a good comp that fights into the Knights well. I just wonder if maybe this investment on the right side might have been a little too much.
It's one of those moments that you can kind of feel the Sobek ban showing its face, where it feels like Sobek slotted in where Cerberus is, gives them maybe a little bit more control all around, and the Cerberus, it's definitely doing its work. It's forcing beads every time fineokay is rotating over. I just don't know if it's slotted in exactly the way they wanted it to.
Paul came from off camera right into the perfect moment and saves NeilMah. Death was on the table, but he was certainly going to get pulled back into a lot more trouble, so that prevents Rival from finding the pick they wanted before starting their next bit of action. But this is the point that Rival have been looking for. Now that fineokay is engaged in these fights a bit more, and I know you were mentioning the Sobek being taken away, but I don't know, man. I'm really persuaded by the Cerberus in this composition. I think that I like it. I'm just wondering if they are going to be able to execute quite as much as they needed to. I doubt part of the plan was for PandaCat to be this far behind on the Ullr, right? Or for PolarBearMike to be level 12. I think it's hurting them that some of the other pieces of this machine didn't quite level up the way they were supposed to.
And that's, I think, credit to Neil, first off, who I can't count how many times on this side of the map we've seen almost that exact scenario that we just saw, where he's stunned or he's locked down somehow. They want to dump damage into him, and he just kind of scoffs at it and walks away, no problem. But there were also a lot of early ganks from Rival, maybe just a few, but they were trying to shut down Zapman. They came over to the left side of the map and then didn't really get anything out of it. Maybe a purple buff, but they never got to shut down Zap himself. He's still undying as of right now. And those 2 deaths between him and PandaCat make a huge difference. The assists are going to be able to give him a little bit of a level lead, a little bit of a gold lead. But Zap has just been able to sit over here kind of relaxed and farming, being able to go around the map, make these rotations. But again, Hachiman has been very safe. And so far, there's been nothing to convince me that that Rival have anything to lock him down just yet. They haven't committed onto Zapman the same way that they've committed onto Scary D. And I'm wondering if, Paul and Zap, especially at this point, are going to be able to start to take the reins of the game and find that control because of it.
And it is worth mentioning, we haven't really seen the full 5-on-5 where I think Rival would have the most edge. These sort of smaller, fractured fights have favored the Knights, but I don't know. That might just be because the Rival haven't gotten all their tools there to sort of overwhelm the sustain. They are going to force down the Tier 1 tower in mid. Neil steps forward, but can't make them pay for stepping up to get the Tier 1. So Rival get the tower and fall back. These are small little gains. I still don't think we've seen the full test yet for this comp.
Yeah, honestly, my eyes are looking at the 5v5, as you've mentioned, but for Rival, it's how many people can fineokay get in his ult? Not just to grab people. I don't think he's going to be able to grab many throughout this entire game, but how many beads can he burn in that process, right? Because there's 4 available right now on the side of the Knights, and just being able to get 3 of them in one ult opens up Sam to come in, opens up Twig to get some stuns, or PandaCat to get some stuns, and all of a sudden the avenue for the team fight opens wide for Rival to come in and just sweep down members of the Knights. But if they don't get something like that engage early on to burn those beads immediately, then QvoFred's going to be able to get out. Paul's going to be able to get out and then cleanse somebody so they don't have to use their relics. It's just those little plays are going to make huge differences. So eyes are on fineokay.
Agreed. He's kind of the linchpin in this set so far. Depending on which way he goes, likely the set as well. Paul has picked up that Phantom as second relic as opposed to something like an Aegis. I think he knows that he's PBM's primary target for that cage. It's really most important that he doesn't get stuck in there so that he can escape. So we'll see how well that relic usage allows him to avoid the aggression from PBM. As the dance around the Gold Fury continues, Neil stepping forward, but no one's really committed too far just yet.
They're trying to get aggressive here if you're the Knights, and I like the use of the stun. This Gold Fury is just a bait. They want the Rival to overcommit. They want them to jump in too far so they can burn someone down. And, you know, our eyes are on fineokay. He's the one who will have to do so to make it work.
This cage does trap quite a lot. A lot of mobility has to be used to get out of it, but Twig has again been left alone in the back, and Scary D can't be peeled anyway. He takes care of the Agni, and that's so much of the damage taken off the table for Team Rival. That's the rest of it as PandaCat ends up falling to QvoFred, a man on a mission. Paul gets the kill on the Sam, and suddenly fineokay and PolarBearMike are left wondering what happened to their backline. It's been shredded and fractured as the Knights continue their aggression. Yeah. A double kill for Paul on this L, and Rival have buckled.
I just have to question where Rival's priorities are in that fight, right? They send 2 people to fight individually, Zapman, fineokay being one of them. Zap still had ult, and Zap was just like, cool, we can fight. I'm just going to run back towards mid using this nice CC immunity movement speed ult that I'm going to be able to disengage with. So it's allowed the Knights to just sit in the backline and, as you pointed out, get rid of Twig, get rid of Sam, and PandaCat for virtually nothing in trade.
And now PolarBearMike cannot contest this Fire Giant. It's not for free. Knights earned it with that brutal fight they just took on the Gold Fury. And so this will go down without the Knights being really in range for it. And I think that for what's starting to come up for me here is that they can't force out enough of the cooldowns from the Knights before the fight starts to really make this Odin cage all that relevant. I mean, once PolarBearMike stepped forward to try and cage 4 people, 3 of them just jumped out of it onto CaptainTwig and immediately tried to take that Agni out of the fight.
The only thing I could think is potentially trying to find a follow-up fight. Like if Rival could get in, burn all of that, escape, and then re-engage just a few seconds later, maybe there's a huge difference, but they just got so divided. I don't know where the calls were going for them specifically. Yeah, because, again, a couple members diving to Zapman, leaving everyone in the backline exposed. And that just shows, I think, the potency not only of the leaps that are on their side, but if Sam isn't able to get the exact ult he needs, or if fineokay's not in a position to lock people down, then that Phantom from Paul, well, hey, that cage, like you said, isn't going to be doing too much once that's popped. You can't lock down the healer. You have trouble locking down the carry. And because of that, Scary D just ran rampant. Like, they didn't have enough to lock down every member of the Knights they wanted to. And it just feels like their fight was all over the place, and instead of allowing them to maybe disengage, the Knights appropriately press the gas pedal and chase down anyone on their checklist. They get themselves a Fire Giant because of it. They get themselves a Pyromancer because of it. Now they get a Fury because of it. I mean, these last, 5 towers, now 4 towers that are remaining for the Knights don't necessarily have a long lifespan ahead of them.
And now it's starting to feel like investing. They didn't invest in Apple early on. They invested in Zune, perhaps, or something like that. It's not quite paying the way that Team Rival had expected. The Knights now threatening on the left-hand side. It is good that the Phoenix in right is exposed for Rival if they won't have a chance to go push down there, but it's really not coming up. In fact, there's a full minion wave coming in. Sam stayed there to force it up so I can get a ton of pressure, but the Knights have given up on threatening the left side Phoenix. They're falling back for now as well, so Rival have done well to kind of slow down this momentum for the Knights. Knights might now just come back, grab the tier 2, maybe go to grab that tier 1 and tier 2 in solo as well, and then start threatening Phoenix.
You know, you had mentioned it yesterday. We don't get to see a lot of tier 2 defenses because most of the time, especially up against a team with Fire Giant, it's not worth it. You're probably just going to lose. But this is one I think Rival could maybe force at least a little bit of pressure onto the Knights.
Sam's lurking in the back, but they've got a ward here. They're going to know that this Awilix is trying to make a play. Stygian Torment does grab Scary D, bring him back to the squad, but Bat of the Hell allows him to escape. The tier 2 tower defense for now looks okay, but look how low Rival are, and only one squad has a Hell, so the Knights all group up around it, get plenty of out-of-combat healing, and the Fire Giant sustain, and they're ready to keep on pushing.
Yeah, I see a lot of anti-heal available on Rival. There's an Ankh even bought by PBM, but it only does the anti-heal if you use the anti-heal. And unfortunately, this is not a good position to go in. Again, it's the question of how much do you want to commit for that tier 2. And I like that call. You know what? We tried. We got to burn a few relics specifically. Zapman's beads are now on cooldown. The Phantom from Paul is now on cooldown. So we can lock them down a little bit easier next time with a cage. Specifically Paul, because unless someone else is going to be able to come through and do something for him, that cage will absolutely control him. It's just then the question of how much can you commit to him without losing your backline in the process, which has been the problem for Rival here. They still have a few minutes of kind of relax. The Fire Giant's going to disappear, in the buff, I should say, in 30 seconds. So they'll have a minute of downtime once that's gone for it to respawn. And then you start looking around this fight in the Fire Giant pit specifically. Still having a tier 1 there actually might be beneficial for Rival just as a, well, quote-unquote safe haven for them, right? Somewhere to fall behind to, just in case they need to reset a fight over there in the right-hand side of the map.
And still does make ending potentially a bit harder for the Knights as well, unless that comes down. Because a little bit of HP over there too. So it certainly benefits them as they're now starting to group up around the Fire Giant pit. We're about a minute out from that spawning up here, Gormizer. And do you like Rival coming out of the base to take a fight here at the FG, or would you prefer them to kind of just fall back and defend on Phoenixes at this point?
Man, they have just enough time. I think they can afford the fight. The problem is it's very much that hit or miss moment, right? If you mess up a fight around the Fire Giant pit, especially 28 minutes in, depending on how long it takes for these teams to go, it's going to be an enhanced Fire Giant instead, then it's almost a death sentence for the game, right? You absolutely lose if you can't control it. But it's worth the risk in my eyes. I think you're in just the same position. If you take it, you win the game here. You have to be very careful with your engage, and that's, again, where my eyes have to fall down for Rival, where they've just been kind of making questionable decisions the last couple of team fights. Where they go is going to be just as important, because those 2 relics that were highlighted earlier is, oh, hey, they've been burned, maybe you can find something. Well, they're back up. It's about 7 seconds here left for Zapman, but they're available, so pressure is going to be big. Burning an ult like that from Quvo might be huge early on, though.
I agree. Very surprised that the Fear No Evil ends up coming out there. You could tell Rival are excited about it as well as they start to step forward a bit. Quvo maybe a bit gun-shy. Didn't quite see how he ended up getting that forced out, so maybe he was under duress. But it's Rival now with the aggressive positioning around the Fire Giant. They're starting the objective up, and the Knights are the ones who have to answer. And without that Fear No Evil, they've lost one of their best tools. PolarBearMike steps forward to play the zoning factor. FG down to half already, but Mike has been burned a lot. He's got to be careful. They go right for Twig in the backline. He has his beads forced out, but there to provide some backup is Sam. He pulls Scary D away, but Bat Out of Hell puts in really good damage. Rival cannot afford to stay on the FG.
And the Fire Giant's still at a 3rd HP, so Knights can move back in, no problem. fineokay jumps in.
He knows he has to keep this fight going because of how low the Fire Giant still is. It's still leached even now, but look how safe Twig has to play. fineokay is so far forward trying to complete the kill into Paul, but he can't get to him, so PolarBearMike picks up the mantle. They do take care of the Hell, trading fineokay, trading him out for Paul, but Zapman gets the kill in return onto PBM, so now it's a 3v4. No way Rival could stick around with these low health bars. The Knights have done enough to push Rival away, and they might want more. The bounce doesn't quite go the way Quvo wants, but he's still chasing Twig.
And it's just that one, it's such a small mechanic that plays in right there, but the fact that you teleport to where the monkey's about to bounce to instead of where it just was hurts him. That's a kill if he hits that 3 just a little faster and jumps onto that Agni. So CaptainTwig kind of getting given a second chance at life here. And because of where they are, I'm actually surprised to see the Knights not putting pressure on the Fire Giant. I think there's potential to steal from Rival, but you could just bait them into a fight and kill them. Maybe if you get the tier 2 on right, maybe you grab this Primal Fury and give yourself a little bit of a bonus, but I feel like the big boy on the map on the right-hand side might have deserved a little bit more attention once they won that fight, and instead of trying to chase down those kills, they already had the control. They could have taken it and then started pressuring a Phoenix right about now instead of having to back and spend this gold.
That worries me for Rival, though, Gore, because that fight was probably about as good as you could hope, right? That you'd be able to get QvoFred to use his ultimate and not have to worry about the Fear No Evil. And even then, it took the full dive from PolarBearMike and fineokay giving their lives to get the kill onto Paul. They just cannot put enough pressure on this hell without it costing them too much, and the Knights are able to win the fight on the back of it pretty well.
And I thought for sure Rival had bit off more than they could chew, right? I thought the Fire Giant's at 1/3 HP. You've used a lot to try and secure it there, and you're low on health. I thought that was the Knights going to come in, again, scoop up the Fire Giant, scoop up the team fight, and then scoop up the win. But unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for Rival, unfortunately for the Knights, they just didn't seem to have everything lined up. The stars weren't quite perfectly in order for them to get all of that. They chase the fight down, they don't get all of the kills, and they don't get the FG buff. But it does open up potential maybe mistakes for either side. Whichever team controls the Fire Giant pit, which right now it's Rival, can force the other team to play to their hand. It controls the pace of the game, and it can keep someone like Neil in an awkward position of how far do you want to commit, how deep can you go right now, and feel safe without giving up your life. Because you take one step too far, you're melted, and all of a sudden it's a 4v5.
PBM took the Mad Eye's cloak off from QvoFred. That's a pretty big deal. Beads and Aegis should be up for all the backline carries. They are now up at this point. And PolarBearMike goes in. The cage has locked in two. Specifically, Zapman is still in trouble, but it's really only fineokay on him. He gets away from the Stygian Torment, but Sam has finally made his way to Paul on the backline and shut him down. This is huge for Team Rival. Look where the rest of the Knights are in the backline. Scary D is still hunting down PandaCat. He has CaptainTwig zoned out as well. That might have saved the fight, him making that play. Meanwhile, Sam for Soccer gets caught by QvoFred. A little bit of help from NeilMah. Not bad, but that's a big stun from CaptainTwig. Maybe Rival can reinitiate off the back of it, but they just don't have enough damage. CaptainTwig too reliant on the cooldowns, and the Knights in Rival end up stalled out.
Man, it seems so great for Rival. Sam finally gets back there and gets Paul. It seems like the best opener. And you know what? I'd trade an 0-4 Ullr for Paul any day, right? I think at this point, dropping PandaCat's not going to be beneficial to you. It doesn't help. But if you are able to get rid of Paul in return, it's worthwhile. But the problem is the Knights feel like they're, in my eyes, overcommitting to the fight. They want to keep the pressure up. They need a kill before they could start something like the Fire Giant here. But they don't have the health to do it. They can't really chase down Rival the way they want to. And now they might be giving up a lot of FG pressure because Neil has to back and Scary D is at half health.
Yeah, Rival are being just annoying enough to kind of stick around. That is problems for them, though, that the left side Phoenix has gotten this low. PandaCat will be the one to defend that off of his respawn and still keep that Phoenix up, but it is really low. Knights could probably get over there and take that at any point. But these fights have been really, really tough for Rival, man. They have not been able to find a way to truly get all the way to the backline there of the Knights. And even when they do, it comes at such a hefty cost. And I think that's why Camazotz gets banned so often. In every one of these fights, no matter what these backlines do, Camazotz is sticking to them and taking them out of the fight. Even if it's not a full kill, you can't stick around at 10% HP.
And it's just the glorious thing he has, so much survivability on his own, whether you want to look at it in sustain or the fact that Bat out of hell, like he has a leap and then he can go up CC immune and have two really large kind of dips in that ult before having to commit to am I going in or am I getting out. And because of that, we've seen Scary D go in, get a lot of pressure onto members like Twig, and just cause distress for the Agni, force relics out of Agni, and it's unfortunate because it's almost impossible to lock him down otherwise.
Cage comes out again, but Sam for Soccer falls early. PolarBearMike will be joining him in the Great Beyond as the Pittsburgh Knights open this fight off with two big kills. CaptainTwig can't find the stun, so Scary takes to the sky to keep up the chase. There is a little bit of peel here from him, but NeilMah comes over the top, and that's too much damage. Scary D gets the credit, and suddenly three members of Rival are watching in black and white.
I mean, that's going to end up causing a lot of trouble for them. But I want to know what Knights are going to do with this. You have such a massive control of the game right now. Where do you go? I think the call, either mid Phoenix, left Phoenix, whichever one. You can burn both down in this instance. And it might be one of the rare times that we get to see a Phoenix Siege without a Fire Giant buff. And it's still all in favor of the Knights. I mean, PandaCat and fineokay have virtually nothing they can do here.
Yeah, it's not just the mid-Phoenix. This could very well just be the game here, Goremizer. Somehow Fine and PandaCat have to make the defense of their life if they want to keep this game going. But PandaCat won't even get the choice. He's forced back into the fountain, just barely still alive using Aegis. fineokay falling to Zapman, the Titan, too low. And the Pittsburgh Knights around Paul on this hell have taken down Rival in Game 1.
I think we see a really good call in the draft from Rival in terms of how do we deal with this hell? And I just think the execution came down to kind of crumbling. A lot of fights that were dispersed. More or less, I don't think it was anything on their side of the draft that really caused them that distress. I think it's the Camazotz on the other side that continually is getting into the back line, that all of a sudden, wait, our composition can't work because now CaptainTwig is dead, now PandaCat is dead. We couldn't save our back line while we're getting aggressive onto theirs.
And there were some curious moments where Rival let up on the pressure throughout the early game, or looked like they gave up on some kills. And I wonder if maybe that'll come back to bite them a little bit, so they didn't get enough out of that early game in order to shut down this strong Pittsburgh Knights roster. But you can't count out the champs, man. They always find a way to get it done. Gore, I'm going to get it back over to Dulcin on the desk to break it down.
Well, the Knights minus Sam plus Qvo find a way to get it done in game number 1. And you know, a god that has started to get picked up a lot here recently, Hu Yi. He's also got a really sweet skin in-game if you haven't seen it yet. Totem Collar Hu Yi. It's in the Grim Omens event. You can jump in, buy it now, and you get a bunch of other skins, some unlimited tier rewards, stuff like that if you pick it up now. And there's also a 1 in 10,000 chance Easter egg with that skin. I can confirm on that skin, 1 in 10,000 chance that a special Easter egg will happen. I haven't seen a video of it yet. But you got to buy it for yourself in order to have a chance at seeing that one. Mifflin with me to talk about game number 1, and we were having a conversation about this, Mifflin. You could see where Rival were looking to go in that early game, and a lot of it was focused on mitigating that Camazotz, mitigating Scary D in that solo lane.
And they were successful doing it. Scary D, 2 or 3 levels down under fineokay for the majority of that early game. I would have liked to see Rival shift some of that focus closer to the center of the map. They have this fantastic draft into hell. They have the Odin cage. They have fineokay with his passive. They've got Agni to apply anti-healing very easily. But the entire time they were shutting down Scary D. By the time they finally make it to late game and they drop Hell in a cage, even at that 32-minute mark on that fight around Fire Giant, we see that Hell gets caught in the cage, as is another member of PK. But they're too far down at that point. Instead of being trapped in the cage with PK, it was truly Rival trapped in the cage with them. It just turns it around too far.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me is sort of the mindset there. And I actually agree. You know, we were obviously hanging out in chat a little bit during that game, and a lot of people were like, imagine giving Hell to Paul. And I think there's some truth to that. This guy's just so good at this god. And I think the god on its own, even without Paul piloting it, just brings too much to the table. So I'm curious, and maybe you have some thoughts on it. Do you think Rival now have to over-prioritize Hell in this next pick ban phase?
If I'm Rival, my first ban, regardless of anything, is immediately going towards this Hell. They got the perfect draft to deal with it. They just weren't able to execute on it. I think once you find that out, letting Hell through is nothing short of a misplay.
And kind of another facet that we were looking at going into this game was the QvoFred, Sam for Soccer kind of dynamic. You know, same rosters, just junglers flipped. And if you look at like the first 5 kills in this game, split 3-2, you know, for one team or the other, the junglers had a hand in kind of all of them. But it was QvoFred who stayed more consistent throughout the rest of that game. Do you like what you saw aggressive level-wise from one jungle to the other, maybe both?
I mean, in that very early game, Sam picks up the first 2 kills in the match, and from there, he kind of coasted for the next 5 or 6 minutes, whereas Qvo decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and hit that gas pedal, and he kept that aggression up. He made sure that duo lane was above water. He tried to help Scary D a little bit, but with the amount of raw aggression Rival was putting over there, doesn't make too much sense to shift your focus as the jungler for PK. Might as well put people who are already ahead even further ahead.
That's the defending world champions that strike first. The Knights take game number 1. Rival will need to go back-to-back in order to take this set. Hell, obviously, the big conversation piece here. Don't need to touch on her too much more until she is either picked up or banned out here by Rival, and that one just makes some sense. Obviously, if you have a composition that's meant to work against it and it didn't just quite go your way, let's take her out of the pool. But I think this does open the door, Mifflin, and we saw it a little bit in the previous picks and bans. Raijin was banned out by the Knights, and that kind of opened the door to Camazotz being locked in. Does Hell really change the dynamic all that much here of this pick ban phase? I mean, who maybe goes by the wayside now that Hell has taken up a ban slot?
I was going to say Camazotz, but that gets banned out immediately as well. Now Yamoja is something to be worried about. There are other healers that are really good. Aphrodite has seen a lot of play recently. We've been seeing a lack of Chang'e. Well, Yamoja goes to the ban, all right. Well, you're still leaving a ton of junglers open. Right? Persephone's available, so there's definitely things that are going to shift the dynamic of this draft. Well, Persephone no longer open. I'm just going to not talk about it anymore.
No, it's fair. I mean, these are all gods that, you know, have been banned out in Hell, kind of maybe filling that spot. I think Merlin is maybe the one now seeing all... Yeah, I kind of set you up there. Hey, Miff, predict the next 6 bans for me, so I apologize for that. But now that we see all 6 locked in, it is Merlin that maybe jumps out to me as the mid laner that isn't banned out. I don't know if Rival looked to move Twig onto that one with their first pick overall. Raijin has been a popular counter pick, kind of an answer back from that. Odin banned out, I think a notable ban there. I think even despite some recent changes to him, obviously prioritized by a lot of teams here in this league. Does mid lane, Merlin, Raijin strike you as something that one of these two teams need to reach for early on?
Raijin, Merlin, Kukulkan, there's so many high-tier mid laners available here. I imagine we see the flex picks picked out first, or even the hunters. Jing Wei is still available, a very popular pick right now. I like this pick from in the Ullr for Rival. It is that flex pick, but there's your Merlin coming in hot for PK.
That's right. Let's set up Paul in the mid lane. He did such great work on Hell in Game 1. Let's give him one of the high-priority mid-lane gods here in Game number 2. Hunbots for QvoFred as well. We loved what we saw out of him. I think you touched on it really well in your analysis. He kind of kept the aggression going from the early game, helped set up the rest of his team. Hunbots has become potent, and that's maybe even an understatement here in the SPL so far. So I think that's a great pickup there for the Knights. I'm curious now is what the next 2 picks look like here for Rival. Obviously setting up flexibility, whether it's mid-lane or long lane with this Ullr, I think is good. Maybe the answer's a little bit more clear now with the Raijin. Ullr potentially now moving over to that long lane. Could see a role swap. But do you like the 2 carries that Rival has locked in here with the first 2 picks?
Absolutely. I mean, these are gods that are completely comfortable for Rival's draft. PandaCat, one of the premier Ullr. Raijin, Twig's been playing it every single game. Sobek for Scary D, most likely. Or not Scary D, rather. Fine,
could be
okay.
Scary D.
That's a fantastic... Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, wait,
maybe
no, he's on the other team.
Pre-team trade.
Right. I'm thinking Solo versus Guardian, and you're thinking Rival versus Knights. So let me rephrase. It could be fineokay or PBM, I suppose. But we have seen Sobek maybe more in the short lane with Solo.
Yeah, Sobek, so good out of that soul lane as well. I mean, you're impossible to gank as well as just playing that secondary support role. He's got some of the best peel for a Guardian possible, as well as some of the best engage, able to pluck someone back and displace them very easily. I like this Xing Shen pickup, going to be able to mitigate some of Ullr's damage, as well as be another displacement tool. Very good at diving as well, so that's going to be a spearhead between him and Hunbots for PK.
I am curious, do you think Xing Chen is kind of in that category of Guardian or solo lane, or I guess support or solo lane kind of flexibility? I think we have seen Xing Chen kind of in both of those roles.
He definitely brings it in both. I prefer him over in that long lane just because he is such a setup-focused god. Skyhook, fantastic for setting up for any hunter possible, as well as that additional survivability, and that double jump means that early gank from the jungler is going to be a little bit less likely to happen. His soul lane, however, fantastic self-heal. The HP 5 that he gets from his passive is going to keep him in lane a lot longer. He's going to have that blue buff to keep his mana up as well, so it's not going to have that healing on 2 fronts, essentially. But this Amaterasu makes me think that this is a Xing Shen support.
Yeah, that would make the most sense here. Amaterasu nursing that 50% win rate, so literally half the time she tends to work out. I won't ask you to tier list Amaterasu, but what are some strengths presumably going up against the Sobek here, and I guess potentially a Hercules?
Amaterasu brings fantastic engagement tools. She has that silence on her dash. She's got this huge ultimate. Guan Yu's old ultimate, if anyone remembers, has the silence, the stun on it as well, huge damage output. But I really think it's the passive and the aura that Ama brings. You're going to be able to blow up objectives very easily. You're going to be able to speed up your team for the chase or give them more power once they buckle down and decide to fight. It's a high level of versatility and survivability.
Well, I kind of gasp with shock. I mean, Hercules, we've seen him 10% of the time banned out just a little bit as well. So maybe some thoughts on him, but I think more importantly, we have to look at this Thanatos now for the first time in the SPL. A new jungler will take to the battleground.
I love Thanatos here. I mean, they've got 2 tanky targets, PK. Xing Chen's going to be very hard to kill short of an execute. Amaterasu is going to be very hard to kill short of an execute. Who has a better execute than the global boy, Thanatos, as well as his gank potential into Merlin? Incredibly high. That flicker's a very short distance teleport, so if he lands the dunk, even if it gets jumped out of the way, he's literally 2 inches away from a Thanatos, the hand of death. I don't want to be right there.
I mean, talk about damage, aggression, Team Rival. They tend to have it all here. Rival looking to bounce back in game number 2 and push us to a tie-breaking game number 3.
That is a ton of aggression on the side of Team Rival. But the Knights, though, after that Game 1 win, Goremizer, they have, I don't know, man, that really impressed me. I thought that Rival had, on paper, all the tools to take them down, and the Knights overcame it. Zapman did a great job. So did Neil. He was under a ton of pressure. So here I am yet again, liking all this pressure that Rival have drafted. They've put PBM on this aggressive Hercules, and yet I'm a bit worried. The Knights have shown they can handle it.
I think, I want to give the credit to the Knights that they play patiently, right? They're not just jumping into engagements for the sake of doing it, and that's kind of what Rival were banking on in a lot of their early poke fests that they had going on against the Knights last map, where it's just, where can we try to convince you? Where can we bait you out? Or can we bait you out? And the answer was no. The Knights just never took the bait. And even right now, Neil may be biting off more than he can chew, but it's kind of keeping PBM at bay as well.
It is. PolarBearMike is delaying Neil from doing this purple buff, even with Neil having the Hand of the Gods. He was just taking too much damage in between to be able to stick on it. That does set up for PandaCat to have this advantageous 1v1 in the long lane. So I think PolarBearMike getting a good use of his time. Meanwhile, fineokay and Scary took a pretty lengthy battle over there too, as they both ended up low, but not much kill potential there. So, Gore, a lot of this action is going to center around Sam for Soccer on this Thanatos, as Neil could get caught out, but Sam not interested in turning around. He wants the red buff instead, and he does successfully grab it.
And what I love is that the Knights, or I should say Rival in this case, they've drafted to be aggressive, and they're being aggressive, but in a different way than last game. Last game, they were looking for kills. They're ganking Scary D, they're ganking mid, they're putting pressure on the picks and the gods. Now they're putting pressure on the map, and that is going to translate into more success. It gets you experience, which gets you levels, which gets you the ability to win those fights in 3 minutes when you have a 2 to 3 level lead, as opposed to trying to fight on fair ground. So this is the amount of aggression I think they wanted, and honestly, even though Twig's Agni fit, I think, really well with the team, there's something to be said about Raijin's damage output that is going to help facilitate, I think, this Thanatos in getting aggressive, as well as the control in the mid lane being almost all on the side of Rival.
The Twig should feel pretty comfortable this game here on the Raijin. I mean, he played fine, I would say, in the Agni last game. I don't necessarily think that the failing there was for him. He was just under quite a bit of duress, and they couldn't make that dive comp work. But this time, Rival looks as though they're trying to say, you're not getting to some late-game 35-minute team fight here this time. They've got Thanatos, they've got Hercules, they've got Ullr, and these are gods that love to finish you off by 22 minutes, if at all possible.
Yeah.
So Knights have to show us that ability to sort of bunker down and negate that pressure that I think they're known for. Last year, when they were under SK, they were one of the best teams at turtling under Phoenixes and then eventually winning.
If I'm the Knights right now, I want to take a page out of Sanguine's book, and I just want to push this game as long as I can, right? I want it to go 30 minutes, because Sam for Soccer has to change his playstyle entirely from minute 1 to minute 20, right? And that's the thing that Thanatos will open up. The aggression they have right now can't just be unfettered aggression 17 minutes from now, even, unless they have nothing but a 10k lead and they're just controlling the game. If they don't get a lot of payoff in these first 8 to 10 minutes with how aggressive they're being, then the Knights can do exactly what you just said, kind of wait, be patient, defend their Phoenixes, and then win 1 or 2 really big team fights in the late game just because of the way that their gods scale. it would be so much more beneficial to him. I mean, Merlin going to be burning people down. Hu Yi is a great late-game boxer. His ult is very beneficial in those team fights, and Mifflin pointed it out, but Amaterasu's weakening aura, being able to go into these fights where it'll be super potent late game, it'll just help the team take those fights a little bit more. So watching over PBM, seeing what he's going to be able to do in terms of aggression, watching over where Sam is making these rotations and how aggressive Twig wants to be in a lot of these scenarios is going to be the eye-opener strategy for Rival, right? If they can't seal the deal now, it might just end up being kind of a slow, unfortunate death for them.
Well, we are seeing this early pressure sort of pan out, right? That's twice in a row that they successfully invaded the red buff. They just got another purple buff invade too, and they have not let the Knights grab these easily, even when they are able to kind of defend their own side of the jungle. And that's because, yes, they've got this pressure in the long lane, but they got pressure in mid too. Twig and Sam were able to out-rotate Paul and QvoFred just now to get over the red buff pretty easily. Obviously, this Hercules Ullr lane is going to be the one that has the most pressure and the ability to rotate into the jungle a little bit faster and able to do so more safely. So Rival are doing all the right stuff, I would say, here right now. They're pressuring the jungle, they're constantly invading, and then once, we get a little bit later in the game, they'll be able to, start looking at objectives too and that sort of thing. But right now, Rival, they're doing a lot of the right stuff.
And it's giving them the leads where they need them. You've got one level lead in the jungle, you've got one level lead in the support. PBM actually having his ult before Neil. Maybe you look at Hercules' ult, not going to be crazy impactful, but Neil not having his ult in some of these engagements, as long as they can prolong that, will slow down maybe some Knights' kind of turnaround potential in a team fight with where that whirlwind of rage and steel can come through.
I love this, man. Twig is not going to stop thunder crashing in aggressively, no matter what we say, and until it stops working, I got to give my man some credit. First blood for Team Rival off the back of the Twig PolarBearMike combination. They also invade the red buff, but there's more action in mid. QvoFred has dropped the Fear No Evil, but good beads from Twig, and he's able to make it out.
And again, beautifully played. You have Twig getting aggressive at the right time and still being able to be defensive at the right time. He loses his beads in favor of the Fear No Evil there, but I mean, that's going to be worthwhile for him, especially with how much they get out of that. One clean kill, a red buff, a good amount of farm. And so far, nothing in return for the Knights to make it scream a success story for them. But again, I think the Knights playing the long con, as difficult as it will be, especially if some of these level leads and experience gains keep going in favor of Rival, it'll be very difficult at 15 minutes to try and play the long con if Rival all of a sudden have a 4-level lead on you. But if you can just slow roll them for a little bit longer, you're starting to find yourself in that position. But we haven't seen anything big and crazy out of Sam just yet. I'm looking at him now as maybe shutting down Zapman, helping get PandaCat ahead, and then you've got 3 to 4 members of Rival that are perfectly in control of their lane.
Well, that's the dive bomb now from Zapman, but this far underneath the Tier 1 tower, he should be relatively safe. For a little while longer, these fights really are just going to be kind of around these buff invades. And I'm wondering, Goremizer, and this is where I want your input, how much should they rotate to it? It looks like the calls do the opposite. Instead of rotating to red, what if the Knights just get aggressive over on blue and solo and strip away fineokay's buff, and one lonely Croc can't defend it by himself?
I mean, just kind of the mentality of, okay, yeah, you can have our red buff, you can have our purple buff, we'll take your blue buff and your speed buff if we can get that deep. Not going to be able to go deep enough for the speed buff, but at least some experience camps right there going in favor of QvoFred. Being able to find farm where you can on the map is what will matter the most for them. And being able to maybe catch out Twig and some moments of, not even aggression, but just farming would be solid for them. But you still have to question, how much can you fight against the Thanatos? How much can you fight against this Raijin right now? Because ults are getting dropped on the side of the Knights, I think, more often than we've seen out of Rival so far, and it's not necessarily finding them anything. It's more to cause a defense and just keep themselves safe and alive and stop Rival from getting as snowbally as they could at this point in the game.
It's another red buff invade, and it's another purple invade. This is like clockwork from Team Rival. And Gore, I think that last play over in solo kind of showed us that this is what the Knights are just going to kind of accept throughout this early game. I think I agree. I don't think they can afford to step in there and fight them directly just because of the way these compositions have landed. So because of that, they're trying to just look for pressure elsewhere, wherever they can, willing to group and try and make some plays there. It's just a question of once Rival do make their bigger move on the back of the leads they've gotten off these buffs, if they can mitigate that damage enough, right? When there is a big skirmish around this gold tier and Rival try and force a fight, can the Knights get away without giving up a bunch of kills and the objective, or can they at least mitigate those losses to some extent?
And those are the key words. The Gold Fury is where my eyes are kind of gravitating for that mini-map. Not because it's something we see often, although right now, yeah, Sam's up in the air. They're looking to try and get rid of Zap.
He's found the stun, and Zapman should be dead here every single time. Good work from Team Rival to collapse onto him. And when that many people come over, Aggro loves to say it, if they want you dead over there, you're going to die, right? When they're willing to commit that much to it. Zap ends up using the beads, too. So he'll be vulnerable the next time they come around. And this is where Rival are now starting to collect a little bit. They slowly built up this lead. And now that Zapman's been left alone, they come over, they grab him. They're not starting the Gold Fury, though. They just grabbed those Oracles, and now they're rotating over to mid. And fineokay still under duress here at blue.
And that's kind of what I was wondering where Rival would go. They have the amount of aggression that they could potentially pressure out that Gold Fury early on. Force Knights into a very unfavorable matchup right now. They have a little bit more secure, a little bit more lockdown for them. But I think being able to get, I would call it a double win over there in the long lane, forcing Zapman's beads and getting the kill. You can walk away from that one with, well, a smiley face on, at least for a little bit, and then use your timers. They've been utilizing them perfectly so far, as you pointed out earlier, but red buff, hey, on clockwork, purple buff's going to be here. Neil is now under duress, forced to just fall back to stay alive.
Was anyone wondering if Traveler's Shoes is enough for you to stand up to an Ullr with Transcendence finished already? The answer is no, as NeilMah gets bopped. QvoFred drops the Fear on the Weevil. Twig responds by going into the Tycho drums, but now QvoFred doesn't have the leap, he doesn't have the ult, but he does have a boulder, courtesy of PolarBearMike, and Twig gets the credit. Rival now up 3-0. Because of that, they are going to move right on over to the Gold Fury. They don't have a ton of ultimates still available here for this fight, but Sam wants to show off his. He takes to the sky, lands right on top of Zapman, and puts him under. That's an easy kill for the Thanatos. Now they're bringing in Scary D. They're walking in one by one like lambs to the slaughter, but that's a big-time ult from Neil. It does stem this bleeding a bit and allow for Knights to reset.
As someone who has been in that position, like when you get a 3-man ult as a Xing, but unfortunately you're using it for peel, it almost hurts to throw them back just because you know how good it could be if you had something to be able to set it up. But you have to save Paul, you have to save Qvo in that instance. I think Neil has a very good ult just to grab those 3 and push them back, because that stops Rival from either snowballing kills onto the Knights or snowballing into that Gold Fury. And the Knights actually, I think, replying pretty appropriately, being able to stay alive in that. They go immediately to the Pyromancer. Not enough pressure to get the Gold Fury, but they could maybe force out a different objective.
No. They'll grab the Pyromancer, but Gore, I think you're correct to identify that how important that moment was, and how important it was that Neil got that ultimate. I mean, if Rival are able to get that kill onto Scary D and then get the Fury right afterwards, then instead of just this 3,000 deficit, it's closer to 4,500 or so. The experience gets a little bit more out of control, too. They can start moving around the map even a bit more. That was what I talked about earlier with mitigating your losses. I don't think you're going to stop this draft from farming Zapman in the long lane, right? They've drafted picks that do that, but you can mitigate some of these other areas, and that's what Knights have done well.
And I'm wondering, because if I read that right, that was Rival being able to take down the Pyromancer for them, so that means fineokay was able to control that, which means for the Knights, everything that was good about it didn't quite stand up for them, right? Being able to potentially make a call that is eye-opening, an objective that they're able to control. Well, it only works if you control it towards the end there. And with a 4-kill lead, now 3,000, just barely under gold in favor of Rival, you have to start looking at where the damage is going to make the big difference. The fact that, you know, you have PBM with his Thebes already stacking versus Neil, who's still kind of playing catch-up 2 levels down. It's just Rival in control of the map. You have to determine where you want to take these fights. And if you're in the right position, there's 3 members right now, technically on the right side of the map for Knights, which leaves Zapman wide open for a gank.
Well, there's the Fury now in favor of Rival. They still got 3 members grouped up and left that threaten this Tier 1. Neil and Zapman are both here to play some defense. Good driving strike, though. Means Zapman has to drop the Purification Beads. Another small win for Rival. And up into the air goes Sam for Soccer. He's considering QvoFred. Well-timed on the leap, but Blink gets him close. But the Fear No Evil pins Sam up against the wall. What a turnaround play. And Paul is able to get credit for the kill. NeilMah, sensing blood in the water, gets aggressive. Twig has no mana, and NeilMah's going to try and stick to him. It's enough for the kill. They make it a 2 for 0, but now Neil stuck in no man's land. PandaCat will make him pay, but that's a big-time play from the Knights.
And if you're the Knights, dropping Neil for a jungle and a mid is worth everything you have in terms of Neil, especially because he had already gotten his ult off, he had used both his relics, so everything that could be down right there is down. You still have his word for vision. Unfortunately, that does leave Zapman open a little bit, but, you know, I guess we touched on it last game. Zapman's kind of used to having that many people over in his lane. Just not enough to turn anything around this time.
Well, it's good work from Rival to recognize they can come over. Remember, they'd already done that groundwork by getting Zapman's beads on cooldown, so they knew they could rotate over and get the kill. But the Knights did good work by getting that 2, ends up being a 2 for 2 kind of overall, but at the time, a 2 for 0. And again, this is kind of about making sure the lead doesn't balloon too far out of control. Anything you can do to kind of keep this snowball from really tearing off and rolling downhill is what the Knights are trying to do here so far. I mean, look at the jungle. They're matched up in XP. Look at the solo lane. They're matched up too. It's really just that long lane where there's still big problems. Twig does have a lead over the Paul as well, but really the big lead for PBM and PandaCat.
And admittedly, I think you're going to see Neil, like, the pain of being so far behind will probably affect him the most. Zap, the way I always view Hunters, especially if he can just sit back and farm, which now he's next to a tier 2, which theoretically is going to feel a little safer for him. He's going to get those items online. He's still going to be able to hit just as hard, and he's still going to be able to make Zapman level plays. They're going to have to continue to invest so much to shut him down on the left side of the map, but we're hitting that 15-minute mark. Once this next Fury goes down, the Pyromancer goes down, that's when Fire Giant starts opening up.
Good Taiko drums means he doesn't have to worry about the CC from Fear No Evil. PolarBearMike gets the kill with that boulder over the wall. So now with the 5-on-4, really where can Rival go? Fury not up for another 2 minutes. No Pyromancer up either. And really, there's not even any buffs up in the jungle for the Blue Invade. So yes, they get that pick onto QvoFred, but there's not a ton on the backside to get. But you could tell Rival are hunting, looking for what meat is still left on the bones. They get those back harpies in favor of PandaCat. And now they'll rotate over to left. A ward here. The Knights certainly know there's a little bit of extra pressure coming. But they're trying to see if there's anything more they can find on the back of knowing QvoFred's down for a bit. They'll threaten this tier 2 and force NeilMah to rotate over.
Just being able to get this pressure, and again, force everyone to rotate over. They're looking for a pick. They have everyone kind of lurking behind where they need them. And being able to keep Paul occupied in mid means that that duo lane is even more susceptible to some damage. I'm keeping my eyes on Sam.
NeilMah, it'd be hard to keep your eyes on him as his health bar is starting to shrink. But they do a good job, NeilMah does rather, of leaping right on out of there. The Thanatos, though, is up in the air and can tell that death is nearby, but that's a good blink from Neil. He does not end up getting executed. Tier 2 tower, though, does come down. fineokay has displaced QvoFred. Meanwhile, the rest of Rival are just still getting aggressive. They want Zapman, who I don't think realized just how much trouble he was in. Meanwhile, Scary D looking for the collapse on the back. QvoFred here, too. Thunder Crash allows him to get away, and this is a good Taiko drums. It's fearing them both back towards the rest of his team. Twig still clinging to life. Finally, QvoFred gets the kill. And there's the Fear No Evil, creates the space, but Rival are not done yet getting aggressive. They pull QvoFred back in and grab one more kill.
That was very similar to fights from last game, except the entire roles were swapped, right? Instead of Knights being able to pick Rival into these weird fights, Rival just separated the Knights. I mean, you have Scary D just trying to focus down Twig, and ultimately they get the kill, but in the meantime, you're losing your duo lane. You have your mid and your jungle getting pressured out. It was just 3 fights essentially going on. And unfortunately for the Knights, they couldn't really collect themselves to turn it into 1 fight or even just 2 fights to make it a little more manageable for them. And so I think Rival are, again, using the lead they have appropriately, trying to find those picks. As much as it's like maybe unfortunate that Sam doesn't get the ult there, they still end up turning that into something beneficial because of how separated the Knights are at that point. And as long as you can pick them apart like that, you keep Scary D away from Neil, who can't protect Cuvo. Like, if they are not anywhere near each other, then the Knights don't have much of a chance at collecting themselves for a fight. But you have to be careful because they keep making calls like this around the objectives of the map.
This time, the Knights do grab the Pyromancer. No heroics from Fine, but the Primal Fury on the left-hand side is being burned. So this will be their answer. Primal Fury for Pyromancer, likely favoring Team Rival. And now they are grouping up nearly S5 here in this middle lane. They have fineokay way deep in the back line behind the tier 1. The rest of the team threatening from the front. But look at this rotation from PBM. He's heading over towards the actual Fire Giant pit itself. He's bringing the squad. It looks like the call is to start up this FG. Scary D's nearby. This shouldn't be a secret, but Rival are like, come in and try and fight us. This is just what we want. It's NeilMah who comes in first. He barely gets to touch the ground. He was in the CC chain the whole time, and Rival get right back to work.
Earlier, they weren't taking the bait on the Knights. This time, they take it, and overwhelmingly, Neil gets burnt down because that's scary. He's still in the area, but they're just having to keep vision. PBM's going for the zone. There's still a lot of steal potential here for the Knights. They just have to question how aggressive you want to get, and Twig maybe actually leaps too soon.
Does. Has to use the taiko drums for CC immunity, but he falls to Zapman. PandaCat is in trouble in the back too, but two stuns from Sam for Soccer. It just wasn't enough. There's the two-man driving strike as well, but this is a big fight for the Knights. It's a 3-for-1 in their favor. Paul ends up getting this kill onto Sam to make it so, and Rival get a little bit maybe too aggressive around this Fire Giant trying to make those plays, and really it's another question about Twig there, right? Using the Thunder Crash too early, and he ends up being a sitting duck for their damage.
And not only that, but maybe holding the Fire Giant a little bit longer. Like, if you're Rival and you get the FG there, you feel happy, but you can tell they're looking for a fight. They weren't necessarily looking for just the buff. That would have been a bonus on the side. And maybe holding onto it just a little too long, a little bit of that FG anti-heal that comes out onto you, as well as just the damage being done, causing some distress. But I also think it's well tempered from the Knights more than anything, because now the lead that did exist for Rival, at least in terms of experience, has shifted more or less in favor of the Knights. There's still 3 levels in the support, 2 levels there in Zapman, but you can see it has just been skyrocketing downward in terms of experience. 2,000 gold, it's still enough to write home. It's still enough to keep you a decent lead. But if I'm Rival here, you know, we're 20 minutes. I'm putting a ticking time clock on this. Thanatos has you know, entered this transition period where he's not just going to 100 to 0 you all the time, especially with how safe Paul and Zapman can be, not only having Aegis available, but a Blink as well as the Dive Bomb. Like, they can get out of engagements and away from Thanatos pretty quickly. You're looking at Sam having to become, you know, that execute machine that late game Thanatos is. And I'm wondering if Rival are going to be able to transition from this unfettered aggression of the first, you know, 15 minutes we saw into the patient game of Smite that Knights have been trying to play this entire time.
The window's closing, Gore. That's what it feels like from where I'm sitting, at least. I mean, Rival certainly still capable of fighting at this point, and even, you know, beyond into the late game. It's just that they're going to be fighting into the Amaterasu aura, into the Fear No Evil from QvoFred, into a late game Merlin and Xing Chen with all the control he can provide in these fights. There's less viable targets because Neil and Scary D are going to be that much tankier at this point. And blowing up the tanks is going to be a lot harder. I mean, this same sort of pick pressure that they were relying on early is going to be a little bit less effective the later this game goes. And this is exactly the way the Knights love to play. They just mitigate those losses until they're back on even footing. Now they're happy to take fights.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The longer the game goes, the better it is for the Knights. For all the reasons you listed, as well as all the reasons for, I guess, if you look at Rival, that it's going to become even more difficult. PBM, yeah, you can be tanky, but I mean, there's a Hu Yi on the other side who's going in for pin. You're not going to survive long under the eye of Zapman, so you have to be careful when he gets as aggressive as he has been. Their CC chains are still very potent on Rival, and that's the biggest thing. The taiko drums have been beautiful in a lot of these cases. The knock-up and stuns from PBM, other than that one, have been on the mark for the most part. So there's still a lot of options for them to lock down members of Knights. But in a 5v5 setting, you have to be very coordinated, and you have to know going into the engagement who you want to lock down, because otherwise it's one ult maybe from the Knights that completely tears your plot apart.
Well, it's NeilMah that goes in first, gets a ton of beads, actually even grabs one pull and brings him into the tower, so Rival can't threaten the tier 1 the way they wanted. But can't you kind of feel it from the way Rival are moving around the map? They're still looking for those opportunities to find some of that aggression, to find some picks, to see if they can set themselves up for a favorable fight around the FG. But they don't love their fight around the FG because of all these tools that the Knights have. They can't quite get one of these picks because the Knights are playing safely enough and falling back when members could normally get isolated. And just now in the tier 1, they don't get a normal fight there to siege. NeilMah comes in, forces out all their safety, and then says, now try and siege us so we can blow you guys up without your beads and your escapes. It's good work from the Knights here so far. Every step of the way, they've mitigated, I hate to use the word, but they've really slowed down this aggression from Rival just enough.
And you use I think a very appropriate, like the window is closing, and I'll use one that it's much darker than that, but the noose is tightening right now on Rival because this game, it's getting to the point where it's going to be over, right? If they can't take control now, I think that Gold Fury is like a great way of just kind of getting a little bit of looseness, right, around the neck again so they can breathe heavily, because there's not a lot of room for error here. If they keep this amount of aggression up and it doesn't pay off, then all of a sudden the Knights are in an even better position to fight from ahead at that point. Right now you're keeping them at bay, you're taking the objectives they can use to get back into the game, and you're locking them away from the fight. I like the idea, don't go for a Fire Giant too soon.
Remember, Neil got those beads from CaptainTwig, so QvoFred has come to collect. The Fear No Evil means there's no escape for the Raijin. That's a big pick for the Knights. Now with the 5v4, they're the ones starting to step up and get aggressive. They take the tier 1 in mid. fineokay is back underneath the tier 2 tower, but there's further aggression from the Knights. They really want to kill this Sobek, and Scary D is able to do it, so that's a 2 for 0 now in favor of PK. In comes the dunk from Sam for soccer. He's looking for Paul way in the back, but there's too much protection. NeilMah puts him at bay, and the Knights still holding on.
And that was causing trouble for Rival last game as well. Sam finally able to get into the back line, but right now Thanatos, unfortunately, even though he could probably kill any of them in a 1v1 because of how much damage he'll output, isn't in a position to stay that aggressive because the Knights are reacting so heavily to keeping their backline alive, whereas Rival, I mean, if you're Twig, you get caught out one more time. If you're fineokay, you're trying to get something done and keep the game state in a favorable position for your team, and unfortunately, it's just not enough. The gold lead is still there, but that's only going to exist for so long. There's 3 tier 2 towers for Knights to potentially take that one back away from you.
Yeah, PandaCat had already used his leap. No way he was getting out. In that situation, the Knights are just playing clean and waiting for a Rival to hang themselves, to bother your analogy, by playing defensively. Now, with the numbers in their favor, they're heading back towards the FG, and I think the Knights would happily take this if Rival don't step up and force them to end up dropping it. The first member forward, PolarBearMike, he's got some backup here with him, but the Knights are playing patient. They're trying to bait Rival into overcommitting. Twig is now pretty far forward, but NeilMah can't commit, so Scary D dashes in. That's the Thunder Crash out, and Knights head right back to FG.
Oh, and this is glorious because look how aggressive, like fineokay goes in much deeper than anybody else, and maybe you don't kill him right there, but you don't need to. You burn his Magi's, you burn his Blink, and now all of a sudden he's a susceptible target for the next minute and a half that you're going to be able to kind of pull this. I like the way that the Knights are starting to use the same strategies Rival did against them. Force them to take the bait, because the worst case scenario for the Knights is, oh, we have to drop it for a little bit and go back and farm, but they're not losing this farm anymore. They're getting their red buffs. They're getting these waves. They lost only 3 towers so far, and because of that, they're able to start picking things up. You burn 2 minutes down until the next Fury, and the Knights are more in control of this game. As we've hit 25 minutes, again, the play style for Rival will have to change to match the pace of the Knights now, and it's a very different game to play. You have something in the first 10 minutes with this composition that is play by my rules or get out kind of deal, right? Like we will kill you or you will just back away and give us what we want. And that's what happened. Knights say, you know what? Take the red buff, take the purple buff. That's fine. We'll just try to find something somewhere else to stay alive. But at 25 minutes, if I'm Thanatos diving that red buff, I'm dead. If I'm 25 minutes as Thanatos trying to jump into the backline just to get a kill onto Zapman, I'm going to die for that trade. So you can't make the same style of play. And it's that question of how well you adapt to a late game composition like this that's still aggressive, but you can't be hyper aggressive, that will make or break Rival for the end of this game.
And it was such small moments, too, that you think about, because Rival did a great job invading red and purple constantly, but the Knights answered appropriately. They got Scary D a bit of a lead against fineokay over in solo. They're able to get a couple picks here and there, or not picks, but trade kills in response to Rival's aggression. And just a couple of small plays, man, that have really ended up hurting Rival and not let this lead expand quite the way they wanted to. They're still ahead in gold by a bit, but the Knights keep showing every time that unless Rival's engage is really, really clean and someone gets picked off basically for free, then Knights' counter-engage, their counter-initiation a little too strong.
Well, it's that awkward moment where for both Sobek and Hercules, they're really good at setting up their team for kills. But to do so, they have to put themselves in danger. So I think the front line here for Rival are going to have to play careful, because even right now, they're isolated. Sam is just close enough. The rest of the team maybe just close enough. But there's a ruler between every member of Rival, and one step too far will end them, essentially. So they have to be careful where they put that aggression.
They're stepping up to the tier 2 because Scary had to go over to the long lane to defend. Taiko drums from Twig allows him to get away from the Fear No Evil, and Zapman stuck on the front lines is low. fineokay is right there to punish. The boulder is coming through too, and that gets NeilMah to execute Threshold. Big kill for Sam. They've got QvoFred low too, but no damage to follow up. Maybe I'm telling a lie as PandaCat hits the shot. It does end up costing them CaptainTwig, but a 3-for-1 might just be what Rival needed.
And Scary D, as good of a gank as it looked like, unfortunately, is, well, now in the exact position they wanted Rival to be in, biting off more than they can chew. He stays alive and he gets out, but those are those moments where Rival can start to open the door and question at least Pyromancer here. They could maybe try to put some pressure onto the Fire Giant, but it's a very dangerous game with Paul in the area, period, but with Scary D around as well. Even without his ult, there's a lot of potential for Amaterasu to come in and just cause some upsets in the team fight. So well played, I think, by Rival, forcing that because they knew how long Scary D would take to rotate, and then even longer because he went for what could have been a great gank. By the time Scary D was able to engage, Zap was already dead, and unfortunately that meant that the support for the Knights ended up not quite being exactly what they wanted.
Fire Giant has been started by Rival. They do still have Sam's ult. They got PBM's ultimate available too, and Twigs has just come back as well. So this is a fight they can certainly take and feel comfortable. Sam Soccer goes up to the sky to threaten with that ultimate, and they're still not dropping this Fire Giant too low into Steel Threshold. They might be being a bit too patient because the rest of the Knights are now on their way. fineokay's got to be careful, gets the Magai's cloak procced, and that's a bit it. The Fire Giant healing back up, and Rival can't strip it away.
You know what? I want to give credit where credit's due because we've been, mentioning Twig's aggressiveness a ton, but the last fight plus this fight, he has been much more patient and much more, like, just the right distance away from the engagement to still have an impact without giving it up. The biggest moment in my eyes actually goes to that tier 2 fight where you have the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. NeilMah jumps in, ults, and it's just off the mark from Twig. It burns one pair of beads, but it doesn't get Twigs. And then when the Fear No Evil is dropped, Twig was able to use his ult instead to try and use the CC immunity. So he's been much more calm, patient with this relic usage, and kind of keeping his head about him in these engagements. And unless you can lock down him and one other, I think, with some of these ults on the side of the Knights, burn the beads or the ults, you're going to find yourself in that position where now Twig is too safe for you, which is kind of the adverse of what you've been expecting whenever he Thunder Crashes in. All of a sudden, he's able to not only get out, but turn a ton of damage back on you.
Zapman not going to be here for this fight. It'll be a little while before he rotates in. Frenzy Pop, Taiko drums. This is the full commitment from Team Rival. Fear No Evil, though, isn't enough. Rival secured the objective, and Sam gets the kill into QvoFred. They throw NeilMah back to the Wolves with a good charge prey, and PandaCat gets that kill as well. That is twice now that the Knights have had to rotate someone over to the long lane to defend against the minions, and Rival have capitalized on the opportunity perfectly.
No, it's the same reason that that Rival ended up having some pain last game, was that left lane getting pushed a little too hard. They lost a lot of pressure on that Phoenix. Now the Knights are kind of feeling it just in reverse once again. I mean, with Fire Giant, the position they're in, especially how tanky PBM is right now, you've got 30 seconds without Quvo, 20 seconds without Neil. Get aggressive. You could end here.
If they can get a pick, they certainly can, but it looks like they want to play it a bit safe. They're still a tier 2, still here in mid, so yep, they got to head back and grab this tower here first and foremost. PBM will tank that up, no problem. But that might be it for their aggression in terms of ending this here right now, right? NeilMah is up in a couple seconds, so is QvoFred. Knights will be back at their full strength, but that is huge for Rival, man, because the window, as we said, was shrinking and shrinking. They just weren't able to get past the Knights' stalwart defense, but recognizing those small windows, those small opportunities they had where they had the numbers advantage, Rival capitalized on them real clean.
But now they're in a position not only able to capitalize on the moments the Knights have kind of opened up, but you've gotten rid of all the towers. That Titan's going to be a little bit easier to kill for you. You've got a 12,000 gold lead, so you're looking at, well, first off, you should look at the consumables because there's a million wards down there in terms of vision. And those are the things that are going to help isolate and pick off members of the Knights, force them into awkward positions, catch out when someone is, well, defending on right lane now as opposed to left lane, and allow Rival to get aggressive in the moments where they need to. With no objectives on the map other than these Phoenixes, you're just waiting to potentially knock down the door of the Knights. The biggest issue will be sieging a Phoenix with 5 members strong, you have to win a very convincing fight here, even with this lead, in order to then take the Phoenix and the Titan. So you have to look at the engage, where they're going to be able to go, and as much as I hate to say it, my eyes go to the beads here for PandaCat and CaptainTwig. They still have 30 seconds before they respawn or they come off cooldown here, so they're still susceptible to that Fear No Evil or to a Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. They don't want to get aggressive too soon.
It's a 3-2 split, though. PolarBearMike being really aggressive in mid to try and make sure he's pulling plenty of focus. QvoFred is in mid, so the carries, for the most part, are safe from that Fear No Evil, at least for a little while. And their beads are back up now, so they should be safe in the backline. But now it's a 3-1-1. They sent Sam all the way over just to push up that minion wave, as to keep that threat there and force one more member of the Knights over to defend that wave. And again, they're trying to play with this numbers advantage. They're trying to give themselves that little bit of extra presence that the Knights can't match.
Well, and realistically, they're not even trying to pressure this middle Phoenix. They're just trying to keep people distracted so the pressure on the left Phoenix will work out. fineokay, along with 2 carries, being able to knock that one down, especially with Fire Giant, will absolutely win them a fight. PBM can just be a nuisance over there in mid.
That's it for left side Phoenix. Twig has once again gone in aggressive, puts the taiko drums down, and trades his life out for Zapman. Sam for Soccer gets the execute on to Scary D to take the Amaterasu out of the fight early, and NeilMah is too low to stick around. He's got to continue to disengage, but the charge prey is there. The boulder follows up as well, and PandaCat gets one more kill. It's just QvoFred and Paul left to defend. 2 Phoenixes, the side ones, are already down. The Titan now under siege. Knights have managed, though, to keep Rival at bay for just a moment. They're going to come back and grab the mid Phoenix and then re-siege.
Being able to burn this one down. They have fire minions now pouring in on the right lane. They have all of the advantage they need to close this one out and potentially just take the end.
Yeah, and that wasn't the Fear No Evil that QvoFred was looking for there. PolarBearMike finally puts the final nail in his coffin. And Goremizer, we are indeed going to be going to a game number 3. Go ahead and see if you can get the full-on deicide here, fellas. Paul gets one more kill, but that is the deicide arrival. Even this setup at 1 apiece.
Just the spice on top of getting that last kill, right? That's all you really need from it. And I think Rival do a really good job of playing with that lead. Again, there were a lot of dangerous moments, especially in the middle there, where it's just like, man, if you make a single mistake here, the Knights are like 1 to 2 steps behind you. So if you screw up just slightly, they'll take that leap over you. And there were even moments where it felt like they were going to take the lead away. But the gold lead never fell in their favor, even though they took the experience away. And Rival then started playing much more appropriately around the objectives, kind of forcing some pressure onto the left-hand side of the map so they could focus on that Fire Giant and that Tier 2 in the right-hand lane and force the Knights into an uneven fight.
That was really all that it took. They got those 2 5v4s, they won those, and they were able to seal the game off the back of it. Good work from the Knights, though, to drag it that far, even though it doesn't get them a win. We got a game 3 on the horizon here, though, Dulcin. What are you guys thinking on the desk? I'm thinking this is what we all hoped and dreamt for here in this matchup. Rival versus Knights headed to a game 3 in Mifflin. I think this one was sort of written on the wall as far as the way Rival wanted to play. You look at that composition they drafted, Hercules, Thanatos, Ullr. That's early game aggression, and Rival had that in spades.
It came to fruition as well. I mean, PBM, Sam, PandaCat, all these gods controlled the first 15 to 20 minutes of the match completely. Neil and Qvo were shut down nearly from minute 1. I mean, it's reflected in their slash lines. Not looking too good there, guys. However, in the late game, it wasn't really getting too much going for Rival. They couldn't really confirm that first Fire Giant. They struggled around it a little bit, but that's when fineokay rotates in. And with this Sobek out of solo, is a huge tanky target with huge disengage and engage tools, single-handedly winning them team fights, finding the plucks that they need. I mean, PBM at no point stopped holding down that W key, finding all the plucks as well. Rival really owes that game to their frontliners.
I agree, and I think it's worth noting, everyone saw it on the stat screen, PBM undying in that game, 5-0 and some level of double-digit assists, and especially with how aggressive he was being, I think not necessarily a turning point, but you just saw the Pyromancer stolen away by Team Rival. Realistically, is that just a small moment in this game, or is that where Rival kind of sprung-boarded an early lead into something a little bit more?
I would say so. I mean, they take just a little bit of a lead in the early. They take a little bit of a win, and immediately objectives start falling. Early Gold Furies, early invades. They move to the Pyromancer very early on. Rival came into this game with a plan. They said, if we win any fight before 5 minutes, we're going to go ahead and try and snowball our way to a victory. and it just works out. That's exactly what Rival's been known for. That's exactly the style that PBM brings with him to every team he's ever been on, and it's not stopping anytime soon.
That's a great win for Rival to get themselves right back into the set, get some of that confidence flowing after a game one that had the Knights kind of in the driver's seat of this set, momentum-wise, kind of just general intangible vibe-wise. Picks and bans will tell us a story here for game number 3 and what direction we are heading. Remember, we have seen a couple flip-flops in those first 6 bans that we're so used to seeing. Raijin, notably in game 1, that opened the door to a Camazotz, but a little bit more standard maybe here in game 2. Although that door is now opened again, Mifflin, with Raijin taking a backseat here in this draft.
As long as Rival doesn't forget that Paul is a nasty Hebo and Hell, I'm sure they're going to be sitting just fine. I don't want to see Rival forget what happened in Game 1 and allow PK to get these comfort picks. This Persephone ban, completely standard, makes sense. That's another one of Paul's gods that he's known for. Huge damage output from a range as well as lockdown CC. All the bans so far are about bog standard.
I am curious, though. This is going to be a fun one to watch. I mean, Persephone, as you point out, nothing to raise your eyebrows at there. But between a Raijin and Ullr kind of in that flex, yes, no ban phase. But with the way things have gone, depending on how these next few look, they're potentially going to be some seriously powerful gods open. Camazotz will go by the wayside as well, so won't get to see that run back for Scary D this time around in game number 3. I'm a bit surprised with how low on the totem pole I think Thor has fallen here in this set. It was Rival or Knights who banned him out in the second wave of bans last time around. But I'm curious if that maybe starts to come to fruition here as Merlin one more time banned out by the Knights. You look at Yamoja, Odin, I think those are the 2 big gods you need to look at here.
Can't forget about Aphrodite either. We're in a healer meta. I can't imagine a world where Rival doesn't ban out Hell here. I mean, Paul is so dominant on it. There's a lot of options available for either team to pick up some healing. There's a couple options, right? You either leave Hell up and take the Aphrodite and trade it out for the healing, or you ban the Hell and open yourself up to having that one high priority healer still available. Yamoja's still on the board though, so there's a couple options. You could go for that shielding, you can get that long range bounce heal, or you can pick up this Aphrodite and get some unbridled aggression out of whoever you kiss.
I am curious, at this point, if you're Team Rival, obviously Game 2, early, often aggression seemed to work out for you. If you're Rival, more of the same maybe in this draft, do you think, Mifflin? I mean, obviously the early control sprung them into late game control. Are you surprised if Rival don't draft something similar?
I think we're going to see a lot of the same from Rival's draft there. I mean, those are gods that Rival's been comfortable on since day one. Hercules on PBM, no one's going to even look twice at that. Huyi's going to match that playstyle as well. When you know that you can control the early game, it's going to open up so many doors for you. You can pick 4 early game gods, pick 1 for the late, and then just run it like that. Sobek again getting picked up. Rival's getting exactly what they had last game, and they're going to be able to just continue doing what they've done before. PK's got to retaliate in their own right.
Yeah, Odin, I think, a strong pick for the Knights to start off their draft here. Yamoja, I think, notably not picked or banned just yet. So Yamoja's still on the table here. Knights are going to get themselves some aggression in the jungle. Is plenty of damage scaling on that Hunbatz. And Olorun, talk about some scaling with him as well. The Knights have, maybe on the flip side of the coin, drafted something that scales a little bit better into the late. Certainly nothing to scoff at in the early, but this Olorun takes some time to get online.
Olorun's a god I'm surprised we haven't seen more of. He's got so many fantastic tools, especially considering the item changes towards these magical ADCs, that additional lifesteal, some of the new rings are going to help him out a lot. There's your Thor coming out. There's a lot going on here. Olorun's, his ultimate, it's an essential no-play field. Once that sanctified field comes down, no one on the side of Rival is going to want to play inside of it even a little bit. The damage output from PK as well, incredibly high. Their team fight potential, fantastic. Hunbatz with Fear No Evil, Sanctified Field, Ring of Spears. All of these tools are going to help them once these late to mid-game team fights erupt around Gold Fury.
Yeah, that's a massive team fight already through three picks here for the Knights. I mean, Sanctified Field will drape over everything, lock him in with the cage, send him running to the corners with the Fear No Evil. I like those points, Mifflin, and I think that's something to look out for here if you're the Knights with their final 2 picks, and Rival as well. I mean, some leaps, with the Huyi, Sobek, the dash, Thor, obviously with the ultimate, so depending on how you play that, some safety. But I think still notable, or no longer notable now, as Yamoja actually makes it to the second round of bans here, so it won't be played, but takes a little bit longer to be taken away. If your rival here at this point, you're obviously still looking for a mid laner, and assuming a support if that Sobek is going into the solo lane. With what's still available, what do you maybe looking for here in this mid lane?
You could go towards that Agni that we've seen hit a little bit of a resurgence. Scylla would be nice here since you already have so much setup on the side of rival. NeilMah being hovered, that's a bit of an interesting pick. That's a lot more lockdown. She's got some decent self-peel and the stealth and the ultimate able to remove her from the playfield. Going to chase down some of these far away kills as well. Olorun is a god that's going to be sitting way deep in the back line for PK, so any sort of poke that find him, Fire Shards will finish him off. I like NeilMah, not the first god I would have gone to for mid, though.
You like, maybe don't love, but you bring up lockdown. I mean, that's already present, granted pretty conditional in a couple of the gods that rival have drafted, but now you have some sort of lockdown with all of your picks there. You can kind of get the vibe that rival are going for, maybe more team fight centric for the Knights, maybe lockdown, find some picks here if your team rival. Olorun does open up an interesting conversation, though, similar, I think, to like that Ullr. You can see the mid lane Ullr or rotate over to that long lane, play some Hunter. So I think depending, well, now we see on what the Knights draft, Hachiman. Does that really answer a question, though? I mean, technically you could throw Hachiman in that mid lane, or are you probably seeing Olorun mid and Hachiman in the long lane?
You could flex them either way. Olorun in the long would be a little bit safer because he has that lack of mobility. He's very easy to shut down in the early game, especially considering there's going to be a Thor on the map. So if PK wants additional safety, I think putting Hachiman towards that middle, give you that CC immune ultimate as well as some fantastic escape tools in the dash and the ultimate would be a little bit safer. But with this draft, I'm willing to guess that Hachiman is going to go towards that long lane. So it's interesting to see how Olorun's going to be able to adapt to all this aggression coming out of Rivals Comp. Kuzenbo finishing off. Yikes.
A couple reptiles in the front line there for rival. If you have to go one way or the other here, Mifflin, are you feeling strongly towards one comp? Obviously, maybe mindset-wise, a little bit different with what these teams have drafted. But maybe who do you like here moving into Game 3?
It looks to me like Rival is certainly on a timer. If they don't pull a lead before the 15-minute mark, somewhere around there, PK's team drafts or scales so well into the late game.
Well, the Knights looking to survive the early and maybe win in the late. Rival looking to end it here in Game 3. We'll go down to Finch and Gore one last time.
Thanks, Dolson. This will be the conclusion between our finals rematch that has so far lived up almost entirely to the hype around it. And could it start off with some early aggression, Scary D? Pulling PolarBearMike in, but PolarBearMike still has the dash. The tail whip there as well, but that should be enough to bring this skirmish to a close. Maybe not everyone with the abilities they necessarily wanted at level 1, but at least everyone makes it out with their lives.
Not every day you get to load into the game and see a 5v5 in the Gold Fury pit happening before the timer technically even hits 0, which it did just now, so the minions spawning up. But I think that's something that goes very much hand in hand with what Mifflin was saying at the end. Rival kind of want to fight very early on, and the Knights, as much as I like to say, yes, I agree, their draft scales best with time, it can still hurt really early on, specifically in the Odin. I'm looking at Hachiman. We saw what Zapman was able to do with that earlier, as well as Qvo on that Hunbat. So there's still a lot of damage, I think, for the Knights to maybe coast themselves into that late game. But it's a very similar conversation we were having to last draft. Maybe not quite so much as, you know, time-locked as they were last time for Rival, but still kind of early game wanting to get that lead to enable themselves to control the game much longer.
Aggressive blinking in from PolarBearMike, but NeilMah should be a-okay. I mean, you're talking a bit about you know, the time limit that might be on this game as opposed to the last ones, and I really do think this one feels a bit more even in that regard. I don't think anyone necessarily has to feel like they have to win at any point in the game or that they'll just be completely shut out later on. I am a bit surprised that Twig has picked up this NeilMah here, though, Garmize. I mean, you cannot jump in on NeilMah, but also NeilMah does deal a ton of damage. If he's the one that's being dove on, perhaps that's the idea. Blow up those clay soldiers, buy yourself some breathing room.
Yeah.
I definitely think this comp can still work, too, with that ability to kind of chase down some kills with the Fire Shard. Not necessarily chasing, but finishing off those last few. I think NeilMah has her place, and I trust Twig to be able to make that happen.
It's actually something, and we saw, you know, when we were talking about Obey in their conversation, it was weird because they wanted to play through Wolfie but put Wolfie on something like a Nuwa. I think this was in week 1. Rival, you know, this does maybe slow down Twig in terms of his play. I doubt we're going to see him be as aggressive on Nuwa as we saw on the Agni or the Raijin, but she still does enough, and it's a lot of utility that comes through. You know, talk about her ult, you can meme it all you want. Yes, she can. It's the hardest skill shot in the game to hit that can come down and kill and, well, at least damage anyone on the map. But being able to set up, as you pointed out, the Clay Soldier stun for somebody, maybe setting up someone like the Thor or for PandaCat, or even fineokay later on when they're making rotations, it enables the team to have a little bit more. And there's still a lot of burst damage underlying in her kit that even though she feels more utility mage than burst mage, she's still going to be able to hurt you a lot more than you want if you're, say, Paul or Qvo or Zap. So being able to self-peel or just eliminate a threat here could end up paying their way for Rival. I'm interested to see how he's going to play it, though, because like you said, you can't dash in, you can't get aggressive. You're not really known for chasing down kills on this new wall, so it will require kind of a mental switch for Twig.
Perhaps that is sort of the idea, though, is just worried that he might get dove by a Tyr or an Odin or something like that, right? And he can always use that ultimate to kind of get up and out of Paul's ultimate there, too, whenever you have to be at the Sanctified Field and want some extra tools. It's a gank over in solo. Scary D doing well to avoid it, but that wall and the charge prey were even better. Even a little bit of help coming from the fire shards, too, and Scary D can't live through all the aggression. It's another solo lane gank for Sam.
I mean, so far, between what we've seen yesterday and today, solo lane gank and getting pressure over there in the solo lane has actually been really important. I need to go back and look at it and see how it correlated from getting first blood in the solo lane to winning the game, because it feels like that's been where a lot of the pressure these pro teams are starting to put on it. Instead of rotating over to the duo lane and trying to get rid of the hunter and maybe get years ahead, it has been all around that solo lane. And we saw how it worked earlier for fineokay and I think for Rival, continually trying to shut down Scary D. Or I guess in that case, it didn't work that well because they continued to put down only Scary D and didn't find much else on the map. This time around, being able to get that kill again kind of gets my mind running back to Game 1 and wondering if it's going to be worthwhile for Rival. One good kill can help fineokay out, but 2 to 3, maybe too much attention over on that right-hand side of the map. And all of a sudden, you're not ahead where you thought you would be.
Well, they don't have that same fear, right, about overcoming to the right too much without having to worry about this hell. But I certainly get what you're saying. They did a great job of it earlier for Fine in that Game 1, and it just didn't quite pan out for them. It was, like we said, it was sort of like that investment they made, and the stock never matured. Do I sound like a broker in that case? Is it clear that I've never had to manage money? Now there's trouble from you. Happening on the left-hand side. Zapman does make it up on to the horse and is able to escape, and that is huge, really, from Zapman. He was under tons of duress and still able to get out of it. Oh, well, Jinx and PandaCat, good work with the ricochet.
Being able to find it, that is about as classic of a kill over in the duo lane as you can get. Is actually, Fear No Evil's dropped out near mid just to be able to get rid of Twig, but that is the safety of a Nuwa ult.
Ooh, but still was getting chased a bit, and QvoFred is going to do it. He's going to go to the Sacred Monkey, and he doesn't even get the kill. Sam Berserker is there to clean it up, and that's too much. You can kind of tell it was a bit delayed. QvoFred thought about it for like half a second there, Gore. He was like, yeah, I think I can go in there and get this kill, and it just doesn't end up working out.
That's that moment of like, can I get it? Yeah, I think I could get it. Guys, do I get it? I'm going to try and get it. And it's just like that literal thought process of going through whether or not it's worth, like that mental evaluation of weighing it out. Unfortunately, they took just enough time for the rest of the team of Rival to respond. This is not how the Knights would like this one to be going, though. I mean, good aggression on the left-hand side just to get a solo kill, even better for PandaCat, so he's up a level over there. A jungle up a level going out because of how this Thor has been able to find it, and I actually am curious to see it. About as classic as you can get, just bouncing it off. Oh, the tower! That's a fancy one. That's nasty. A new one for me, I'll be honest. Like, of all the other ones I've seen, you ricochet kind of behind the tower, and you find them in the loop, and kind of that nook and cranny, but being able to find any flashy kills, good enough for PandaCat. And moments like that are going to be where Zapman has to kind of keep his mind about him, where he's standing in the tower if he's that low, because otherwise PandaCat's going to be able to get a lead that he hadn't really been able to control for the last few games. Zapman has been more dominant in this duo lane than we've seen out of PandaCat, so getting PandaCat ahead will definitely change the flow of game for him.
Scary D under tower there a bit, but should still be okay. That's just the Sobek. And yeah, PandaCat and Sick Ho Yi ricocheted. That's a combination as old as time. Sam for Soccer is here on the left-hand side, considering looking to get aggressive on the Zapman, and Zap looks as though he notices. I didn't quite see if there was a ward here that Zapman is seeing him on, but he seems to sense that there is some kind of trouble. Instead, they'll just settle for the purple buff invade. Meanwhile, a blue buff invade coming out on the right-hand side. Rival trying their best to defend, but it looks as though the Knights are successful, and they shall escape as well.
Just trying to figure out where they want to get aggressive, and again, you take one buff, potentially lose one in the process. So trades across the map. I like the call though, because the minute you recognize that there's maybe an overcommit on the left-hand side of the map, get aggressive on the right, and vice versa. It's kind of like the old Gold Fury, I guess, saying when it comes down to it, is just if they are going to send 3 people over to the solo lane, then the rest of you better be prepared to go get that Gold Fury for the team. As of right now, maybe still a little bit too early, especially with the way the commitments have been going, but Rival controlling the pace of the game and controlling it very well. Not necessarily trying to force the Knights into bad position, they just are making appropriate pressure calls throughout the map, where it's just like, what can we afford to take, what can we afford to lose, and how safe are we going to be doing it? Twig, knowing that he's safe in his ult, can play a little looser on the Nuwa, I would say, than maybe on some of these others. And the same thing, especially having someone like Sam on this Thor, being able to back him up. Thor has been making game-changing plays all season so far, and I think putting it onto someone who is a World's MVP is only going to be even better for you. I'm looking at his ult and how much that's going to end up kind of paving the way for Rival, especially if we see something similar to what Scream was doing. What was that, yesterday? When he's hitting a lot of these ults that are winning his team the game. Like, those are the moments I think Sam's going to be able to bring as well.
But I've seen a bit of a trend here with Sam. He's really active in these first few minutes of the game. And then right around now, a lot of the times he'll kind of slow down a bit. I think it happened and kind of hurt them in game 1, where he got up to a good start and then kind of stepped on the brakes there a little bit. Yeah. So I wouldn't hate it too much if Sam kind of kept looking for those opportunities. Now, some of it you got to give credit to the opposition, as PolarBearMike is in the CC chain from hell. But he is now spinning around, using that watery grave to buy time. Paul, though, does manage to get the kill, but Scary D has to overcommit to help out. And he ends up falling, and fineokay is still here. He's got Paul absolutely slowed. Big damage into the charge prey. Now they just need Twig to find the damage. No, Fine doesn't need help. He takes care of Paul himself, and Sam jukes out that leap from NeilMah and is still able to keep up the chase. Has Neil low and gets the kill.
And just so well played, and Sam is still looking to get aggressive. The hammer going to be off the mark. He's too low to teleport in. And I like the call from the rest of the team. Go look for the farm where you can find it, where it's guaranteed and not just picking on QvoFred under the tier 1, especially if you give up too much for it, because now you have a lot of pressure. They do have the red buff timer, if I'm correct here, for Rival, because of where Sam was sitting. So I think they'll be able to maybe call in for an invade, maybe look around. They want to secure their own jungle first. But that's just beautifully executed, I think, from top to bottom from Rival. And a lot of it comes onto the back of PolarBearMike keeping himself alive like just long enough, but also Sam recognizing where he needed to be and getting aggressive.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is at PolarBearMike's feet for finding a ton of extra time in there. I mean, because the initiation onto him was so good that it looked like he was going to blow up before Sam had time to get there. But he bought just enough time for Sam to get in, kind of change that fight around. And even though he still ended up dying in PBM, I mean, it was enough to set up for the rest of the Knights to find a really favorable trade. They get 3 more kills on the back of it, and that's huge, man, for Rival. This was them. It was really the Knights kind of getting aggressive and trying to look for a play, and Rival responding to it appropriately.
Yeah, 3,000 gold lead, I think at any point in the game is going to be hurting you, especially at 10 minutes into the game. But 4,000 kind of shifting between that, or shifting down from that 5,000 mark that it was when we first switched to the graphs in terms of experience is where it's big. And that's kind of where I want to touch on exactly what you had pointed out. Earlier, Sam was 2-0, and that was on the Awilix, and it ended up falling off. Now he's 4-0 on the Thor. I want to see this aggression, like you had said, stay up.
Well, they dropped the aggression onto the Gold Fury. They'd started it in response to the Knights getting a Pyromancer. That's not the first time the Knights have gone for an early Pyromancer this set, but Scary D ends up in trouble. That wall was perfect from Sam. They end up pinning Scary D up against it, and so Sam wants to keep up the chase. He goes up to the Ullr for the dunk. Can't find NeilMah there either. They do lock him down, or rather he drops his own cage. I guess Sam makes up for past wrongs with a ton of damage there on the Neil. Twig must have put some in there or something, because that was a lot. NeilMah ends up popping, and now Rival can head back towards the Fury.
You know, if this was school, I would probably have to give a grade to what Sam did, because it's like, man, I don't know, you missed the ult, but you get the kill. Like, I don't know where to put you, but it's played well, and it gives them the aggression they need to get that Gold Fury. Knights are just too zoned out. They were too low and too separated because Neil had to back off from all the because Neil was gone, and the rest of them had to back off from all the pressure that was put over here, specifically on a Scary D. With no tanks to open the way, you don't really want to run in there if you're Paul or Zapman.
And Kuvo might have had a chance to maybe get near the edge and drop a Fear No Evil. It was very close, but they didn't even give him that outside chance because fineokay had a well-timed charged prey to get the stun, then obviously the pluck back over his shoulder to take him back out of there. So this is where they initially did a good job locking down Scary D. Sam wants to chase, but makes the call to come back here towards mid instead, and they get another good charge prey. fineokay has really been nailing them, and they blow up NeilMah pretty nicely.
And that amount of setup, I mean, one of the things that's great about charge prey is kind of the same thing that's really bad about like Neat's backflip, right? It's very predictable to where they are going to end up. And so if fineokay is able to lock them down as consistently as he has been so far, if you're Twig, that means you know exactly where you need your minions to be in order to try and get it. And of course, controlling the minion AI can be a little difficult as Nuwa sometimes, so maybe they're not always going to be right on call. But then PandaCat can set up a stun, or Sam for Soccer, as we saw there, can throw out a double tap and set up a wall. And that combination is coming out not just with the charge spray, but also with PBM, being able to push people into that wall. It's been used against Scary D a few times, where the CC is just too much for the Knights to handle right now.
Rival have been chaining the CC together in really interesting ways as Sam gets aggressive over in left. They were looking for Zapman. That's the fire charge from CaptainTwig as well. But Zap heading all the way back to the Tier 1 tower. The squad defends the purple buff before Rival can get there to try and strip it away. And this should be relative safety. He's got NeilMah here keeping an eye on any other potential dives. Sam, though, does take some extra poke, and then he goes on his way.
I will say one thing right now, and that is that Rival, as much as I love what they're doing, it does seem like they're all going in on Sam for Soccer.
Nice try. Couldn't quite find the charge prey from fineokay, so they can't bring Scary D back in. Scary did get the beads from Twig in the middle lane as well there, of course. So Twig now a little bit less safe. Got to be kind of have a quick trigger finger on that ultimate, I imagine, to get himself out of dangerous situations. But that's not even up right this second. So a little bit of safety from Twig for a little bit until he has those cooldowns back.
Yeah, and once he has his ult available, it's, again, a little bit of safety that will glare for him and maybe keep him alive there. But again, my eyes, as much as it, like, they always just instinctively fall to the junglers right now because they've been making such huge plays. But when you have your jungler 5-0-1, it's great for Sam. But at the same time, it kind of catches my eye off guard because you kind of want to diversify some of your targets. I'd like to see Twig or PandaCat getting their name on some kills here so that if you lose Sam in a fight, you don't lose everything, right? But he's going to be going up. He's looking for Zap just to try and get him ahead.
Zap getting dunked on yet again. The hammer not quite enough, but that's why you have a new to finish off those kills. Twig hasn't missed a fire shards yet as he successfully shuts down Zapman there on the left-hand side. 0-2-0 now for him. He's about 2 levels behind PandaCat. The other disparity that I'm worried about is in the jungle with QvoFred and Sam, as there's more pressure in left.
They're in a good position. This is actually, because of where he's standing, not even because of the blink that comes through there from PBM, but Neil was in a prime position for a Hu ricochet. Now he's taking a lot of damage. He's waiting for the team to rotate, but he might have taken too much poke.
But QvoFred doesn't have the ultimate. Remember, they forced this out from him just a little while ago. William was when he had to end up using it defensively. So he doesn't quite have it, and now they might have a chance to collapse onto Paul. There's the Sanctified Field, but that's why Watery Grave is so strong. He gets right on through it. Paul does create some space, though. It makes it disengage, but what about QvoFred? Has to use his Purification Beads, has to use the leap. fineokay blinks in and finishes up the kill. QvoFred falls 2, and Rival continue the steamroll.
And I like this call. Get aggressive. You're already over here. The Fury's down, so there's nothing to fall back to. Then push forward. Find yourself a tier 2, especially this early on, 16 minutes into the game. Fire Giant buffs usually what you need to kind of secure those almost instantly, like a tier 1. It's kind of surprising that just the 2 members there, I guess 3 with the rotation coming through from the Knights, is going to be enough to push them away. But I like the call to get that pressure. It forces everyone from the Knights over on the left-hand side, which might end up hurting them because that Fury respawns in 20 seconds. But as of right now, I like where Rival's mind is at. They have control of the game, and they're making great calls with it.
Yeah, I wonder if the lack of information on where Scary D was kind of the problem there for Rival trying to stick around. I mean, you don't want him walking up for an easy, multiple man fearless or something like that behind you. So they played a bit safe. Give them that tier 2. It's too early to throw anything away on that kind of fight. And make sure they're in position for this next Oni Fury spawn. And they are in position. fineokay already in a zoning stance. They're trying to keep the rest of the team at bay. Now the squad's here. They pluck NeilMah back to the rest of the team. But that's not a ton of damage on him. Neil's still healthy. Can't say the same for Oni, though. It's down below half HP. So the Blink's now coming out from the Knights. They drop the cage. But Twig makes it out with that fire shard. So now the re-engage can start up for Team Rival. Sam has gone up to the air, and he's found his target. It's Neil. He was the target to start with, and he's the target to end.
And unfortunately, I mean, you could maybe highlight the fact that he's only 1 level behind PBM, but I mean, level 11 right now for Neil. He's starting to fall behind. He's getting picked on a lot. 0-3-1 even. So Rival recognize him as a huge threat. The cage has been very potent. The stun, maybe even more so. And it's not something they want to deal with. And that was just beautiful. Of course, it's Zapman, so the rule of law means that you aren't allowed to lock him down. But the fact that you were able to get that much was gorgeous.
And I think fineokay got the blink off before he was put into combat by that ulti from Zapman. He turned around and put the shots out, hit everybody, but fineokay was able to blink forward, get in range of the charged prey. That's a nice cleanup kill. Rival are playing really well right now. They'll get the tier 2 tower in left. They got the Fury as well off the back of the peel onto NeilMah, and so far the Knights have not really had an answer. I feel like the problem is that QvoFred, I don't think he's gotten to have an offensive Fear No Evil yet this game. He's always on the back foot.
Yeah, the fact that there's unbats in the game, I kind of forgot over the last few minutes. It has not had the impact. Right here, he finally gets to get aggressive, but, well, hey, Sam is in the area, and Sam comes for safety that time around instead of soccer. And either way, it's going to be helpful for the team. I just think it works so well for him because of that. Like, Quvo, until you mentioned his name, I legitimately had forgotten he was existing. I was focused so much on where the pressure is coming out, what can Scary D do, waiting for Paul to maybe make some big saving play. Because the Fear No Evils, as you mentioned, like except for that last one, have all been defensive, and even that one didn't quite amount to what he wanted. And I think it's just the over-aggressiveness that time around, kind of maybe turning up too much to counteract how defensive he's been, ends up costing them a lot. And now they're in a 4v5 if you're the Knights.
How can I cast this FG? I'm still reeling from Sam for safety. It's down to half HP at this point. Frenzy popped as well. Scary gonna throw his hat in the ring, but Rival secure the objective, and they claim the life of Scary D. NeilMah stuck in no man's land as well. CaptainTwig weaving in the autos. That's okay. Sam for safety shows up to get the cleanup kill, and now Rival with Fire Giant on all 5 members, leading 14-1 in kills, and with a near 8,000 gold lead with 2 tier 2 towers still left on the map. They're in a really confident position.
Man, my mind immediately goes, hey, look at the bright side. They used all 4 of their ults. Like, the only one that's still up right now is CaptainTwig. But that's the brightest side I can see right now. This tier 2 and right should fall down no problem. I expect if they want to, the tier 2 and mid will be soon thereafter, and then there's no towers left for the Knights to fall back on. The next Fury is looking to be a Primal Fury, so for Rival it's still worthwhile to get, but it's not the end-all be-all of the game. So there's so much room you have to work with right now, right? The map is your toy, it's your sandbox to explore. You can go clean up all of your buffs. There's quite a few buffs that are close to coming up here for the Knights, and they're going to have to give up that ground relatively soon as a Rival get aggressive. And so everything is open. In my mind, they're probably going to want to look for... you split between the Fury and the Tier 2. I expect the Tier 2 to be first, and then maybe some Phoenix pressure. And then if that starts to go south, then that Primal Fury will be a nice consolation prize.
This has been just kind of back to basics for Team Rival from me, Gormizer. Establishing pressure around the map. Sam ganks solo. Sam ganks the long lane. Took Zapman out of the game. QvoFred has really struggled this time. Remember the Sacred Monkey blink back underneath the Tier 1 tower to start the game where he doesn't get the kill? That ends up hurting him. There's been some miscues from Qvo here in this game in particular, and really all of the Knights, and Rival have capitalized really well. They've put them in those difficult spots, and now Knights are in another tough one, trying to defend their left side Phoenix up against the siege of Rival.
And this is where a 3-2 split work out really well. PBM can rotate relatively quickly from Phoenix to Phoenix, but so can Sam. If he goes up in his ult, if he's needed in left lane, he's going to be there when the team needs it, so they can afford that pressure and force something out of the Knights.
They've already gotten a ton of space and a bunch of damage on the left side. Phoenix, the cage, comes down the side of the Knights, and that means it's time for Sam to reinitiate. I think he has an idea on where QvoFred is, but that's a good leap from Qvo, keeping his head on his shoulders to get back out of there. But Rival already got what they wanted, Gore. Left side Phoenix is down.
I mean, that's the most important Phoenix in the game just because of how much distraction factor. That has been the one Phoenix in both of these maps so far between these two teams that has made the biggest difference. Granted, it's always been the Chaos side left-hand Phoenix, but it pulls one member minimum from the Knights to defend over there. So if you aren't looking at it, you'll see minions pouring down, eventually fire minions pushing in. So if they find a defense on one of these other two Phoenixes, then all of a sudden you're having a Fire Giant dance that's a 4v5 or a Phoenix fight that's a 4v5, depending on how long it takes Rival to try and break down the rest of the base.
It's kind of crazy. The Knights have Fear No Evil and Sanctified Field, two of the best team-fighting ultimates in the game, and we haven't gotten to see them make a single offensive play. They've been playing defense the entirety of this game so far. Look at all the space Rival get in right with that big minion wave there. They should be able to threaten it quite easily. They take down the right side Phoenix. Now, what about mid? Sanctified Field does slow down PBM, but fineokay almost takes care of Paul by himself. It cost him his life. QvoFred is there to punish him on the backside, but the damage has already been done. They lock down Scary D in the front line. Thorns works as a deterrent, but once it's up, CaptainTwig is there to put in the damage. That means now it's a 4v3 in favor of Team Rival. The mid Phoenix is soon to fall.
Everyone's just low enough, specifically PBM, on the side of Rival that they can't aggress into the Titan here. They don't have that much pressure aligning up with them, so they can fall back. They have fire minions now pouring in from the left-hand side, making it into the Titan room itself. Right-hand side, the fire minions are about mid, and for mid, they are, well, finally spawning. So, hey, a free Primal Fury. Assuming that they get this, it's going to be a free Pyromancer. They can gear up for the next 30 seconds to then look at that Fire Giant. Spin the gold they just got from that beautiful siege. fineokay will respawn. Well, everyone's coming up very happy here for Rival. The only two deaths have been onto your frontliners of all people. It is a gorgeously played game from them. And Sam has been in a very appropriate position, being able to get aggressive, making that call where there's just enough minions on the right-hand side for him to be able to get that right-hand Phoenix on his own. Not typically something you see as a split-pushing Thor. But hey, if it looks good, it looks good, and Sam made sure that he modeled it perfectly.
So it's another strong push there for Rival. Once Fire Giant fell off, the squad decided to back. They've stripped this jungle pretty clean, too. There's really just not much for the Knights to go get in terms of scraps to try and farm back up. The Fire Giant now back up as well. And at Gore, at this point, there's really no world where the Knights can come out and try and contest that. This is all about finding some kind of way to defend on these Phoenixes. And I really don't know a world where they're able to do it without a giant ult from QvoFred. It's a lot of pressure, I think, that they put on him. He's done a couple of good examples of locking down one person with the ult.
Yeah.
But you need one of those dream ultimates, man, those miracle ones that can hit multiple members in the team fight if they're going to slow down Rival.
And you know, your phrasing, and something that we see often at this point in the game, it's defend on the Phoenixes. It's very difficult to do when there aren't any Phoenixes. Granted, these areas are still good little choke points to try and force a fight in, especially for something like a Fear No Evil or a Sanctified Field. But as you have pointed out, it's just they're only getting used defensively. You don't see QvoFred going in and getting a kill. Right now, they're going to blink in, but there's no follow-up from the Knights.
They got to fight outside their base, or else the Titan will just end up being punished. There's the dunk down from Sam, though. fineokay and CaptainTwig all get one. The kill feed lighting up for Team Rival as they take care of Pittsburgh Knights with 4 members down. Neil can't stop them. Rival will take the 2-1 here over PK.
and pushing into the fountain just at the end for a little bit of flair there from PBM, ends up going down. But I mean, you know, say what you want. Game 1, I feel like was maybe a little bit more tug and war, and it looked really good for the Knights. Game 2 started off strong for Rival, got a little murky in the middle, but then they closed it out strong. This game was just control from start to finish. I mean, they dropped 2 kills the entire time. They recognized, I think, the critical assets and where they needed to put that focus, and they weren't too focused on one side or the other like we saw in games 1 and 2. They got a little bit of everywhere covered in their aggression, and that just turned into such a large lead that the Knights couldn't fight back.
Yeah, it felt like as that set went on, Rival had a better understanding of what the Knights wanted to do and were more dominant in each one of those games. So a little bit of revenge for Rival after what happened to them in World's Finals last year. Let's get it back over to Dulcin and Miffle to break it down on the desk.
After a couple contentious games, this one about 25 minutes long. In Mifflin, we were talking a little bit in the pick ban phase. We figured this Rival team, with the composition they drafted, wanted to come out swinging, hitting you in the mouth early on. And they did that and then some. I mean, even you want to look at one specific guy, Sam for Soccer on that Thor, made his will felt, 7-0-8. And Team Rival didn't look back.
I mean, I'm reading my notes for this third game, and they're the exact same as Game 2. Qvo and Neil got shut down in the early. Sam for Soccer finds a ton of kills, or Sam for Safety now that he's known like that. I mean, a lot of the aggression in the late game, again, was born out of fineokay, just finding all these fantastic plucks, disrupting the backline, and dealing an insane amount of damage because he had a huge lead coming into every single fight. There's not much to break down when Rival's only willing to die 3 times in the entire game, and one of them was literally just PBM went into mode and literally walked into a fountain.
Yeah, at that point, nothing really mattered, and I think worth noting, CaptainTwig effectively doubling up the damage of everyone else in this game. There was just no great answer for this mid laner here for the Knights. Well, for Team Rival, Knights didn't really have themselves an answer, and I love seeing the creativity here, and I think that's something Rival can build on.
Creativity in spades. I mean, I don't think anyone expected a Nuwa to get picked up today, but my MVP has to go to Sam. Every single hammer he threw, regardless of CC, regardless of where he was, it found a double tap on at least one guy. Sam completely controlled the pace of the last 2 games of that set. That's some of that early aggression that Rival is signature for. It's time for some of these teams to start adapting to it, maybe match it in the early or completely shift your draft, PK that is, towards a fully late game comp. Forego some of these more early game bridge characters in Hachiman. Forego some of the bridge in tier and just fully commit to your strategy of playing safe. That might be an answer for Rival, but right now they're looking pristine.
Yeah, that's kind of my follow-up question here for you after this set. Expectations versus reality and what we've seen with Rival. Obviously, week 1, I mean, at some point we got to stop talking about it because their past 3 games have been near flawless, I think, for them. Do you think this Rival team is finally starting to hit those expectations that we all had set for them at the start of this split?
Rival's looking nigh unstoppable if the early game goes their way, and even then, once they get to late, they're putting up fantastic fights there. This squad is something to look out for. I think right now the general consensus when you think of these top teams, you immediately go to Radiance, you immediately go towards Sanguine, you go towards SSG. I think Rival's right up there with them.
They have to be a lot of weight at the top. This is a very competitive league this time in the SPL. Hey, Radiance Rival, they're playing next Saturday, by the way. That's certainly going to be a fun one to watch. Thoughts on the Knights, though, because I think that's an interesting conversation now to have moving after this week. A team that, you know, has found a little success. They had a win over Obey, have now fallen a couple straight games, looking for some momentum. It's been game 3s, but the Knights just haven't been able to quite put it together over their last couple.
Knights look like, to me, they're a team that is completely dependent on Paul. They need Paul to pick one of his flavor picks, Hebo, Hell. That's when they really see their success. When a team like with an early game focus like Rival comes and they can shut down that early mid aggression, they can make sure he doesn't farm up very easily into the late. That's when PK really starts to struggle a little bit. I think maybe if Paul can find some more picks that he's going to be completely dominant on, or if PK decide to maybe try and facilitate him a little bit more, play through some of your other star players, Zapman, shift your focus there. maybe then PK is going to have a little bit more success. But right now, it's looking a little bit one-trick with their methodology for the dub.
Here are your updated standings after one of 2 games we have for you on Sunday. Radiant still looking for their 4th win, and they'll have that chance later on against SSG, still looking to play their 4th game, here as well. So SSG right there neck and neck with rival Sanguine, United a little bit behind. Quick thoughts. I don't want to stray too far away from this set that we just saw from rival and the Knights, but what are you expecting here between SSG and Radiance in our next set today?
I'm expecting sparks to fly. These are some of the best teams in the league, as I just said when I was comparing rival to them. These guys are all phenomenal players. I mean, you got multi-time world champions on SSG. Radiance has been literally unstoppable. I mean, this is going to be a pretty sick set.
I think it's actually going to be a really interesting test to watch for Radiance. SSG today, and then their next game will be up against Team Rival next weekend, next Saturday. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch, see how this Radiance team can continue to build on what they've started off so far here. That's it, though, for our first set of the day here today. Team Rival in 3 games are able to take it over the team that beat them in the World Championships just previously in the Pittsburgh Knights. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got SSG up against Radiance.